Hi guys! Tonight we step quietly into a medieval winter, and you wake before dawn inside a low, smoky hut where frost feathers the air and your breath arrives in pale clouds. You lie still for a moment, listening. Wind rubs the walls like a rough palm. Snow whispers against thatch. Somewhere close, an animal shifts and exhales, and that warmth matters more than comfort ever will. You probably won't survive this if you expect silence, softness, or a cozy blanket that actually stays warm. Sleep here is not an escape, it is a strategy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are here, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights and let your shoulders drop as we drift straight into the story. You are a medieval serf, bound to land that does not care about you. Winter has arrived without apology. The hut around you is small, dark, and shared, because space is warmth, and warmth is survival. The floor beneath your bedding is packed earth, cold enough to steal heat through straw and bone. A mainstream historical fact to ground us is this. Most peasant households in medieval Europe lived in single-room dwellings, especially before the late Middle Ages, with cooking, working, animals, and sleeping all happening in one space. It sounds chaotic, but it is also efficient when fuel is scarce and nights are long. You shift slightly and feel the crunch of straw beneath you. Straw smells dry and faintly sweet, mixed with smoke that never quite leaves your hair or clothes. Your bedding is not a mattress as you imagine it. It is a loose pile of plant stalks, sometimes refreshed, sometimes left to flatten into something closer to soil. A quirky tidbit from the margins of everyday life is that some households mixed aromatic herbs into straw, not for luxury, but to discourage insects and dampness. Lavender, rushes, or even wild thyme sometimes find their way into the bedding, offering a brief illusion of comfort before winter air overwhelms everything else. You sleep dressed. You always sleep dressed. Your tunic stays on. Your cloak becomes a blanket. Removing clothes would mean surrendering precious warmth, and there is no fire to restore it once lost. The hearth nearby is quiet now, only embers hidden under ash. Firewood is rationed carefully, saved for cooking and the hours before sleep, not wasted on the deep night when you are meant to lie still and endure. Smoke hangs low, stinging your eyes even in darkness. It seeps into the straw, into your skin, into memory itself. The walls around you are thin, wattle and daub. A woven lattice of sticks smeared with mud and dung forms a barrier that slows the wind, but never defeats it. You can hear the weather. That is one of the first lessons of sleeping here. Wind is not an abstract idea. It is a sound, a pressure, a presence that tests every crack. The roof above is thick with thatch, straw layered deep to shed rain and snow. It insulates better than you might expect, but it also breathes, sighing softly as frost settles and shifts. Nearby, an animal exhales again. Perhaps it is a cow, perhaps a pig. Livestock often share the space, especially in colder regions or during harsh weather. This is not sentiment, it is physics. Bodies generate heat. Animals are living furnaces that do not require wood. Their warmth pools low to the ground, and you angle your sleeping place to catch it. Hygiene is a secondary concern when fingers ache with cold. As you lie there, your mind wanders, slow and heavy. Sleep does not arrive quickly. It never does. Your stomach is not full. Winter meals are thinner, and hunger has a way of sharpening cold rather than dulling it. You tuck your hands under your arms, curl your knees slightly, and make yourself smaller. Stillness is another kind of insulation. There is an open question that scholars continue to circle without fully settling. Some researchers still dispute how deeply people in these conditions actually slept, questioning whether medieval peasants experienced long, continuous rest, or a pattern of lighter, fragmented dozing shaped by cold, noise, and necessity. You feel that uncertainty in your own body now, hovering between awareness and dreams, never fully surrendering. Outside, the village is quiet, but not silent. A distant door creaks. Someone coughs. A dog barks once, and then thinks better of it. Sound carries differently in cold air, sharper and farther. Inside your hut, breath and shifting straw become the night's rhythm. Children sleep close to adults. Elders are placed where warmth gathers best. Bodies are arranged like pieces in a puzzle whose only solution is survival until morning. You think briefly of the Lord's Hall, larger and better built, with more fuel and thicker walls. The thought does not bring comfort. It brings resolve. Dawn will come, whether you sleep well or not. Fields will need tending even under frost. Rest here is not about feeling refreshed. It is about keeping enough strength to stand again. Your eyes finally close, not because you are comfortable, but because your body insists. Cold hums softly around you, and smoke settles like a blanket of memory. The night stretches on, patient and unmoved, and you float within it, half awake, half dreaming, learning the first rule of medieval winter sleep. You do not conquer the cold, you negotiate with it, one breath at a time. You drift without ceremony from that shallow sleep into a deeper awareness of the space around you, because comfort never quite lets go long enough for true oblivion. Morning is still far away. The hut feels smaller at night, its limits defined not by walls, but by the reach of cold air that creeps inward, as if curious. You become aware again of the structure that holds you, this shelter built not for ease, but for survival. A clear historical reality anchors this moment. Medieval serf homes were constructed quickly and cheaply, often by the families who lived in them, using materials taken directly from the surrounding land. Timber from nearby woods, mud from fields, straw from harvest leftovers. There was no architect drawing plans for warmth or airflow. The goal was simple: build something that stands, something that keeps rain out, and something that can be repaired when it fails. That is enough when life is measured in seasons rather than decades. The walls beside you are uneven. You can feel it when you lean an elbow against them. Beneath your palm, the daub is cool and faintly gritty, sometimes cracking as winter dries it further. Wind presses against these walls, not violently, but persistently, finding weaknesses through repetition rather than force. You learn early that still air is warmer air. Any movement is an enemy. You turn your face away from the side where drafts slip through and burrow deeper into your cloak. The roof overhead is your greatest protection. Thatch works by trapping layers of air between straw, forming a surprisingly effective barrier. Snow settles on top and, for a moment, even helps insulate, weighing the thatch down and sealing small gaps. You listen to the roof quietly working, fibers tightening and relaxing as temperature shifts. When ice forms, it crackles faintly, a sound that becomes familiar enough to fade into the background of your thoughts. A curious detail from the edges of daily life adds texture here. In some regions, families deliberately let smoke stain the inside of the roof. Over time, soot and tar from the hearth helped preserve thatch, repelling insects and slowing rot. What irritates your lungs at night quietly extends the life of the structure above you. The house survives by making you slightly more uncomfortable. There is no ceiling as you imagine one. Smoke rises freely until it escapes through the thatch or a simple opening near the roof peak. This means heat does not stay where you want it. Warmth lifts upward, abandoning those lying on the floor. You feel this imbalance clearly. Your face might be warm for a moment, while your legs remain numb. You shift again, endlessly adjusting to chase pockets of bearable temperature. Scholars continue to disagree about how much these homes varied by region and period. Some argue that by the later Middle Ages, improvements in building techniques created noticeably warmer interiors, while others caution that for most serfs, change came slowly and unevenly, if at all. From where you lie, these debates feel distant. Tonight, this hut is what exists, and its limitations are immediate. You are not alone with these thoughts. Everyone here is quietly calculating warmth in their own way. A child whimpers softly and then settles. An older relative clears their throat, the sound rough with age and smoke. No one speaks. Words would waste breath, and breath is warmth. Silence becomes another shared resource. The earth floor beneath you plays its own role. During summer, it remains cool and forgiving. In winter, it becomes a cold sink, drawing heat downward without mercy. Some households spread extra straw or reeds directly on the ground before laying bedding, creating a thin barrier. Others lack the surplus. You can feel the difference in the way cold climbs slowly into your hips and shoulders, reminding you that gravity favors frost. Your clothing helps, but it is never dry in the way modern fabrics are dry. Wool absorbs moisture from the air, from your breath, from the ground itself. Dampness is subtle but persistent, making warmth feel temporary, always slipping away. Still, wool is your ally. Even wet, it insulates better than linen, which lies cold and unhelpful against skin. You are grateful for every thread, every patch sewn by hand during brighter seasons. Outside, winter deepens. The village lies under a shared sky, each small house fighting the same battle alone. You sense that connection, even as you lie still. Hundreds of bodies nearby are negotiating with cold in similar ways, adjusting straw, pulling cloaks higher, breathing shallowly to conserve heat. Sleep here is not private. It is collective, spread across the land like a quiet agreement to endure until light returns. Your eyelids grow heavy again, thoughts slow, not because problems are solved, but because your body insists on rest despite them. The hut creaks softly, a sound you no longer question. Cold remains, patient and steady, but you have learned how to exist within it. As you drift, you carry this understanding with you, that shelter in this world is never perfect, only sufficient, and even that sufficiency must be renewed night after night. Cold announces itself first through the floor. You notice it before anything else, before hunger, before worry, before the slow ache in your shoulders. The ground beneath you is not just earth, it is a reservoir of winter, packed tight and unyielding, holding the memory of frost long after the sun has disappeared. When you lie down, that cold does not rush at you. It seeps upward patiently, as if it knows time is on its side. One well-established detail of medieval daily life is that most rural homes had bare earth floors, sometimes tamped hard, sometimes mixed with straw or ash, but rarely sealed or insulated in any meaningful way. Wood was expensive, stone was rarer still, earth was free, and so earth it remained. In summer, this floor was cool and forgiving. In winter, it became a slow thief of warmth, pulling heat from bodies that had little to spare. You feel it through the straw beneath you. Straw helps, but only briefly. At first it feels springy, almost kind. Then, as your weight settles, it compresses, flattening into a thin layer that barely interrupts the cold rising from below. You shift your hips slightly, trying to find a thicker patch. The movement makes the straw whisper and crackle, a sound as familiar to you as wind in bare branches. A small, easily overlooked detail adds texture to this moment. Some households scattered ashes from the hearth across the floor, believing it helped absorb dampness and reduce the bite of cold. It did help, a little. It also coated everything in fine grey dust, working its way into clothes, skin, and lungs. Warmth was borrowed at the cost of cleanliness, a trade no one debated for long. Your feet suffer most. Even wrapped in wool, even tucked beneath your body, they rest closest to the earth. Numbness creeps in slowly, not painful at first, just distant, as though your toes belong to someone else. You curl them, press them against your calves, anything to remind them they are still part of you. Hands follow soon after, fingers stiff and reluctant to move. The floor is not level. You know every dip and ridge by memory, learned over countless nights. You angle your body toward a spot where straw gathers naturally, pushed there by months of movement. That shallow mound becomes prized real estate, claimed quietly and without argument. In winter, comfort is claimed by habit rather than discussion. There is an unresolved question that lingers in academic circles about how people adapted psychologically to these conditions. Some historians suggest that constant exposure to cold reshaped bodily expectations, dulling discomfort over time. Others believe the cold was always keenly felt, endured rather than accepted. Lying here, you suspect the truth lives somewhere between. You are used to the cold, but you never forget it is there. Nearby, someone coughs again, deeper this time. Sound travels low across the floor, carried by the same cold air that chills your skin. You hear breathing, slow and shallow, each exhale carefully measured. No one moves more than necessary. Movement wastes warmth. Stillness preserves it. Your mind drifts to small strategies. You tuck the edge of your cloak beneath your back, creating a thin barrier between you and the ground. You pull stray straw toward your shoulders. These adjustments are quiet rituals, performed without thought, refined over years. Each small improvement buys a few minutes of comfort, sometimes enough to slip closer to sleep. The earth beneath you feels endless, ancient, indifferent. It has seen generations lie upon it, hoping for rest before another day of labor. Tonight, it receives you as it has received so many others, taking warmth and offering nothing in return. And yet, you breathe, you endure, you remain. Gradually, the sharpness of cold softens at the edges as exhaustion takes hold. Sleep does not arrive gently, but it arrives all the same, settling over you like frost, thin and fragile, but real. You become aware of the walls only when the wind speaks through them. Not all at once, not loudly, but in soft interruptions that brush your ear and cheek as you lie there. The cold does not crash in. It slips, probes, tests. The walls are meant to slow it down, not stop it entirely, and you have learned the difference through many winters like this one. It is widely accepted that most medieval peasant homes relied on simple wall construction made from wattle and daub, a woven framework of sticks coated in mud, clay, straw, and whatever binding material the household could gather. This method was fast and affordable, and it worked well enough in mild weather. In winter, however, those same walls revealed their limits. Tiny gaps opened as materials dried and shrank, creating invisible paths for air to move where it pleased. You feel one of those paths now. A narrow ribbon of cold slides across your face, cool enough to wake you slightly. You turn your head away and tuck your chin down, instinctively shielding skin that has already felt too much frost. The wall beside you is uneven, lumpy where hands pressed mud into place long ago. When you lean against it, the surface is cool and faintly damp, smelling of earth and smoke. There is a small but telling detail here that rarely makes it into grand histories. Families often repaired these walls constantly, patching cracks with fresh mud whenever weather allowed. Winter made this difficult. Repairs waited for spring. Until then, people lived with the drafts, memorizing where they crept in and arranging their sleeping places accordingly. You know exactly which side of the hut leaks the most. Everyone does. Wind sounds different when it moves through imperfect barriers. Instead of a howl, it becomes a low whisper, a soft breathing that never quite stops. It brushes the straw near the wall, making it rustle faintly. You listen to it without thinking, the way one listens to rain on a roof. Familiar sounds lose their power to alarm. They become part of the background of survival. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the wool resist before settling into place. Wool carries the scent of animals, of lanolin and old smoke. It scratches slightly at your neck, but you welcome the irritation. It reminds you that you are still warm enough to feel something. Cold, that numbs completely, is far more dangerous. Modern researchers remain quietly divided over how effective these walls truly were at retaining heat. Some argue that when properly maintained, wattle and daub offered reasonable insulation for its time. Others point out that without sealed floors and ceilings, any benefit was limited. From where you lie, this discussion feels almost academic. The wall slows the wind enough that you are not frozen outright, and that is all it needs to do. Someone shifts nearby, closer to the center of the room where drafts are weaker. Bodies instinctively migrate inward during winter nights, forming a loose cluster away from the walls. No one announces this movement. It happens gradually, over weeks, until everyone knows their place. Children sleep furthest from the cold edges. Elders are given spots where the air is stillest. Your breath fogs faintly in the darkness. You watch it rise and vanish, each exhale carrying warmth away. You try breathing slower, shallower, conserving heat. This, too, is learned behavior, passed down without words. Winter teaches restraint in all things, even in breathing. The wall creaks softly as the wind presses harder for a moment. You imagine the branches beneath the mud, flexing slightly, holding together as they have for years. This structure is not elegant, it is practical. It is just strong enough to last another season. That knowledge is strangely comforting. Perfection is not expected here, only endurance. You think of daylight, of how these same walls look different then. Sunlight warms the surface just enough to release a faint, earthy smell. Flies gather in warmer months. Tools lean against it. At night, all of that disappears. The wall becomes simply a boundary between you and something colder, darker, and less forgiving. Your fingers curl into the edge of your cloak. You pull a fold up toward your mouth, breathing through fabric to warm the air slightly before it reaches your lungs. The trick works. Barely, but barely is enough. Sleep inches closer, heavy and uneven. Outside, the wind loses interest and drifts elsewhere. Inside, the hut settles into stillness again. The walls remain, imperfect but standing, doing what they can. You drift with that knowledge, suspended between drafts and dreams, letting the quiet persistence of shelter carry you through another stretch of night. The roof speaks in its own language, one you have learned to understand without ever naming it. As you lie there, half wrapped in sleep, you hear faint sounds above you, a soft settling, a dry whisper, the muted slide of snow shifting its weight. These are not threats. They are reminders that winter rests directly overhead. What surviving structures and long-standing research make clear is that thatched roofs were the most common form of coverage for rural medieval homes across much of Europe. Straw, reeds, or heather were layered thickly, angled to shed rain and snow, and tied carefully into place. When done well, this roofing could last many years. When done poorly, it demanded constant attention. Either way, it shaped your nights as much as your days. You imagine the roof from the inside because that is how you know it best. There is no ceiling to hide it. The underside of the thatch is dark, webbed with smoke stains, dotted with the occasional spider web catching ash instead of flies. Smoke from the hearth rises freely, curling into the straw before finding its slow escape. Heat follows it, drifting upward, abandoning you below. You feel that loss every night, even if you no longer resent it. A quietly revealing detail slips into focus here. Over time, smoke hardened the thatch, coating it with residue that discouraged insects and slowed decay. The same smoke that makes your eyes sting also protects the roof above you. Comfort and preservation work in opposite directions, and you live at the uncomfortable end of that bargain. Snow thickens on the roof as the night deepens. You do not see it, but you sense the change. Sound dulls slightly. The air feels heavier. Snow insulates, pressing the thatch down, sealing small gaps where wind once slipped through. For a while, the hut feels almost still. This is a fragile gift. If the snow melts and refreezes, it can pull moisture into the roof. If it grows too heavy, it can strain the wooden frame beneath. Balance matters, even here. There is no agreement among historians about how often roofs failed during harsh winters. Some evidence suggests collapses were rare, thanks to careful maintenance and community knowledge. Other interpretations point to seasonal repairs as proof that damage was common and expected. Lying beneath the roof, you do not calculate odds. You listen. Sound tells you what you need to know. Tonight, the roof holds. Occasionally, a bit of dust or ash drifts down, landing softly on your cloak or face. You brush it away without opening your eyes. It is part of the night, as familiar as straw beneath you, or breath beside you. The smell of smoke clings to everything. Sharp at first, then oddly calming. It signals shelter. Fire has been here. People have been here. The roof creaks faintly as temperature shifts. Wood contracts in the cold, tightening joints, making quiet complaints. These sounds no longer startle you. They blend into the steady background of winter, no more alarming than the crack of ice on a pond. Silence would be worse. Silence might mean snow too thick, weight too heavy, danger approaching unnoticed. You think briefly of rain, of how different nights feel when water soaks through poorly packed straw. Cold rain is crueler than snow, stealing heat faster, soaking bedding, turning earth floors into mud. Tonight, you are spared that misery. The cold is dry, sharp, predictable. Predictability is its own kind of comfort. Nearby, someone sighs in their sleep, a long exhale, fogging the air before fading. Breath rises, meets the roof, and vanishes into dark straw. The roof absorbs sound as well as heat, keeping your small world contained. Outside storms feel distant, muted, less personal. You curl slightly onto your side, finding a position where your back is shielded from drafts and your face turned toward the warmer center of the room. Above you, the roof continues its quiet work. It sheds snow. It holds smoke. It stands between you and the open sky. Sleep settles deeper now, not because the night has grown kinder, but because your body has learned how to exist within its limits. The roof remains, imperfect but steady, doing what it has always done. And under it, you drift, trusting layers of straw and wood to keep winter just far enough away until morning. Sleep never belongs to you alone in this place. Even in the deepest part of night, you are aware of others breathing beside you, shifting straw, adjusting cloaks, sharing the same thin pocket of warmth. The room is small, and that closeness is deliberate. Space wastes heat. Proximity preserves it. You learn this early, long before you understand the reasons in words. What records and material evidence consistently show is that most medieval serf households slept together in a single room, often without clear separation between work, rest, and storage. Privacy is a modern expectation. Here, it is a luxury no one can afford. At night, the room becomes a carefully arranged cluster of bodies, tools pushed aside, animals settled near the edges, everyone fitting together like pieces that must align or fail. You lie close enough to hear the quiet sounds of others dreaming. A child murmurs softly, caught in some half-formed image. An older voice snores faintly, the sound uneven but steady. These noises are not distractions, they are reassurance. Each breath confirms that the cold has not yet claimed anyone. Each shift of straw signals life continuing. The air is warmer near the center of the room. You feel the difference when you edge closer, inch by inch, careful not to disturb others too much. Everyone understands these small negotiations. No one complains unless someone pushes too far. Even then, words are rare. A nudge, a cleared throat, a slow repositioning usually settles things. Energy is conserved for daylight. A quietly revealing habit shapes how you all arrange yourselves. Children are placed between adults, not only for protection, but for warmth. Smaller bodies lose heat faster. They are surrounded deliberately, wrapped in layers of wool and flesh. Elders are given spots away from drafts, closer to the hearth's lingering warmth. These arrangements are not written rules. They are traditions learned through loss and memory. Animals occupy their own places within this shared space. A cow or goat rests near the wall, its bulk radiating steady heat. You can feel it even from a short distance away. A low warmth that pools near the floor. The smell is strong, a mix of hay, dung, and animal breath, but it fades into the background. What remains is the benefit. Livestock are not pets here. They are warmth, wealth, and survival, breathing quietly through the night. There is a detail often missed when imagining these nights. The presence of animals also stabilizes temperature. Their bodies release heat slowly and consistently, smoothing the sharp drops that come when the fire dies. You have felt the difference on nights when illness or loss removes that warmth. The room feels emptier then, colder in ways that go beyond numbers. Scholarly discussion has yet to reach a final conclusion on how people mentally experience this constant closeness. Some researchers suggest it fostered a strong sense of communal identity and shared endurance. Others argue it was simply necessity, endured rather than embraced. As you lie here, half pressed against another shoulder, you suspect it is both. You do not romanticize it, but you would not trade it for isolation on a night like this. You adjust your position again, careful and practiced. Straw rustles softly. Someone sighs but does not wake. Your cloak is tucked around you, overlapping with another's. Wool brushes wool, exchanging warmth. Fabric smells of smoke and labor. It is not clean, but it is familiar, and familiarity soothes in its own way. The room itself seems to breathe. Warm air gathers near the center. Cooler currents slide along the walls, circling slowly. You sense these movements without seeing them, guided by instinct sharpened over winters. You keep your face turned inward, away from drafts, mouth covered loosely with cloth. Each inhale passes through wool, warming slightly before reaching your lungs. The ceilingless space above allows smoke to linger, forming a hazy layer that traps a little heat. Your eyes sting faintly even now. You blink slowly and let them close again. Smoke is unpleasant, but it also signals that fire has been here, that warmth was made earlier and might be again tomorrow. It is the smell of survival. Someone shifts nearby, perhaps dreaming, perhaps seeking a warmer spot. You accommodate, without thinking, moving a knee, turning a shoulder. These adjustments are constant and unconscious, like waves settling stones on a shore. Over time, the room finds its balance. You think briefly of solitude, of sleeping alone under heavy blankets in silence. The thought feels distant, unreal. Here, silence would be dangerous. Silence would mean no breathing, no movement, no shared warmth. Sound is proof of life, and life is what you guard through the night. Outside, winter presses against the walls, but inside, the shared space holds. Bodies radiate heat, breath thickens the air. Even the animals contribute their steady warmth. The hut becomes a small island against cold, imperfect but functional. As the hours pass, you drift deeper into sleep, pulled under by exhaustion rather than comfort. Dreams come in fragments, shaped by the sounds around you. A cough becomes a distant bell, a shifting hoof becomes thunder. You do not mind. Dreams are lighter here, easier to leave when cold nudges you awake again. Near dawn, the room cools slightly as embers fade completely. Even then, the closeness helps. Heat lingers longer when shared. You tuck yourself closer to the center one last time, guided by habit and half-sleep. In this single room, surrounded by others, you learn a quiet truth about medieval winter nights. Survival is rarely solitary. It is collective, built from shared breath, shared warmth, and the unspoken agreement to endure together until light returns. The warmth you rely on most does not come from fire or walls or even blankets. It comes from breath that is not human. As the night deepens, you become more aware of the animals sharing the space with you, not as shapes in the dark, but as steady sources of heat and sound. Their presence is constant, reassuring, and impossible to ignore. What everyday evidence from medieval rural life makes clear is that livestock were often kept inside or directly attached to peasant homes during winter months. This was not done out of affection. It was practical. Animals represented wealth, labor, and food, and keeping them close protected them from theft and cold. Just as important, their body heat warmed the space in ways no dying ember could manage through the night. You can feel that warmth now. It settles low, close to the floor, a slow and reliable glow that rises gently into the straw beneath you. A cow exhales somewhere near the wall. The sound is deep and rhythmic, almost like the tide moving in and out. Each breath carries warmth into the room, spreading it outward in small, patient waves. The smell is strong. There is no pretending otherwise. Hay, manure, damp hide, and animal breath mix into an odor that would overwhelm you if you were not used to it. But familiarity dulls discomfort. After a while, the smell fades into the background, replaced by something else. Safety. Animals that sleep nearby are animals that are alive, and animals that are alive mean food, labor, and warmth tomorrow. A small but revealing detail emerges when you pay attention. Animals shift far less than people during the night. Once settled, they remain still for long stretches, conserving energy. This steadiness makes them excellent sources of heat. Unlike humans, they do not toss or turn, breaking the fragile balance of warmth. Their presence is predictable, and predictability matters in winter. You are careful about distance. Too close, and there is risk. A startled animal can kick or roll. Too far, and the warmth thins. Over time, you learn the ideal placement. Close enough to benefit, far enough to remain safe. Everyone in the room knows this spacing instinctively. Children are kept closer to adults. Adults manage the space between themselves and livestock. There is a quiet routine to settling the animals before sleep. They are fed, watered, and positioned deliberately. Straw is arranged not just for comfort, but for insulation. Hooves are checked, tethers are adjusted. These tasks are done with care, even when hands are numb. A restless animal can disrupt the entire night. Researchers continue to explore how this proximity shaped human health. Some argue that sharing living space with animals increased the spread of disease. Others suggest that constant exposure strengthened immune responses over generations. Lying here, feeling the steady warmth at your back, the debate feels distant. Tonight, warmth outweighs hypothetical risk. Survival favors the immediate. The animals contribute more than heat. Their sounds create a layer of noise that fills the room gently. Soft snorts, the rustle of straw, the occasional scrape of a hoof. These sounds blend with human breathing, forming a low, continuous hum. Silence would feel wrong now. Noise means presence. Presence means life. You adjust your position slightly, angling your back toward the warmest part of the room. The difference is subtle but real. Your spine relaxes a fraction. Your shoulders loosen. Cold still exists, but it retreats enough to allow deeper rest. You breathe more evenly, less guarded. A curious practice appears again and again in village life. During particularly harsh winters, people sometimes rearrange their sleeping order entirely, placing the most vulnerable closest to the animals. Elders and infants benefited first. Strength determined placement, not status. Winter flattened social differences within the household. Everyone depended on the same warmth. You think briefly about cleanliness, a concern that would trouble you more in daylight. At night, it loses priority. Straw can be replaced. Clothes can be aired when weather allows. Warmth, once lost, cannot be easily recovered. You choose survival again and again, even when it means accepting discomfort. The air near the animals is slightly warmer and slightly heavier. Moisture from breath and bodies gathers there. It makes wool feel damp over time. Still, damp wool insulates better than dry linen. You are grateful for that knowledge, passed down through generations without explanation, learned through trial and error rather than instruction. Not all animals sleep peacefully. Sometimes a goat bleats softly. Sometimes a pig shifts, snorting as it settles again. These sounds wake you briefly, but you do not resent them. Each noise confirms that the animal is alive and warm. That knowledge is comforting in its own way. There is no firm agreement among historians about how common this practice was across all regions. Climate mattered. In milder areas, animals were kept outside more often. In colder zones, proximity increased. The pattern shifts with geography and season. Here, tonight, the practice is unquestioned. Winter demands closeness. You drift in and out of sleep, guided by the steady rhythm of animal breath. Your dreams grow heavier, slower. Images blur. Cold still presses at the edges of your awareness, but it no longer dominates. Warmth has carved out a small refuge within the night. At some point, you wake briefly, not from discomfort, but from the absence of movement. The room is unusually still. Even the animals are quiet. Snow has thickened outside, muffling sound. The roof bears its weight. Inside, warmth lingers, trapped beneath layers of thatch and breath. You take a slow inhale, drawing in air that smells of smoke and hay and life. You exhale gently, careful not to waste heat. Your body sinks back into straw, into shared warmth, into the familiar balance of endurance. Sleeping beside livestock is not dignified. It is not clean. It is not ideal, but it works. Night after night, winter after winter, it works well enough. And as you slip deeper into sleep, held between human and animal warmth, that is all that matters. When you shift in the night, the sound that answers you is not wind or breath, but the dry whisper of straw. It crackles softly beneath your weight, rearranging itself in small avalanches that you feel more than hear. This is your bed. Not furniture, not a frame, just plant stalks gathered, shaken loose, and spread thick enough to lift you a few precious inches above the frozen earth. What long-accepted evidence shows is that straw bedding was the most common sleeping surface for medieval serfs, used by nearly everyone who lacked the wealth for wooden platforms or woven mattresses. Straw was cheap, available after harvest, and easy to replace. It offered modest insulation and some cushioning, but only when fresh and plentiful. Over time, it flattened, shifted, and lost much of its warmth. You know this bedding well. At the beginning of winter, it feels almost generous. The stalks are springy, lifting you gently, holding pockets of air that slow the cold rising from below. As weeks pass, bodies compress it. Moisture from breath and damp air works its way in. The straw breaks down, becoming brittle, dusty, and thin. You feel every stage of that change in your bones. You adjust your position, trying to gather more straw beneath your hips and shoulders. This is a practiced movement, done slowly so as not to wake others. You drag a handful toward you, spreading it carefully, creating a thicker layer where your body presses hardest. These small acts of maintenance happen nightly, quietly extending the usefulness of bedding that must last until spring. A lesser-known detail adds depth to this scene. In some regions, people mixed rushes, dried leaves, or even bracken into their straw bedding. This was not done for softness, but to improve insulation and manage dampness. Certain plants absorbed moisture better than straw alone. Others added scent, masking the smell of smoke and animals just enough to make sleep easier. Despite these efforts, straw never forgets what it is. Sharp ends poke through clothing. Fine dust rises when you move, catching in your throat and nose. You suppress a cough, turning your face into your cloak. Even a small cough wastes heat and risks waking others. You learn to breathe shallowly, letting the irritation pass. Your bones ache slightly as you lie still. Hard work during daylight leaves its mark, and straw does little to ease sore muscles. You shift again, rolling carefully onto your side, curling your knees toward your chest. This position reduces the surface area exposed to cold and eases pressure on your back. Many sleep this way, instinctively, learning through discomfort what the body prefers. There is an ongoing conversation among historians about how often bedding was replaced and how clean it remained. Some suggest straw was changed frequently, especially in households with access to surplus harvest. Others argue replacement was rare in winter, with families enduring degrading conditions until warmer weather allowed for cleaning and renewal. Your experience leans toward the latter. Winter stretches resources thin. Straw is precious now, not abundant. You feel the straw beneath you respond to your body heat. It warms slightly, just enough to soften the sharpest edges of cold. This warmth is fragile. If you move too much, it disperses, and you must wait for it to build again. Stillness becomes a skill, learned through repetition. You hold yourself carefully, balancing comfort and immobility. Nearby, someone shifts as well, and the straw rustles in response. The sound travels across the floor, a quiet signal of shared wakefulness. No one speaks. Words are unnecessary. You all know this dance, the nightly negotiation with bedding that is never quite enough. Straw also carries memory. It smells faintly of summer fields, of sun and harvest, buried under layers of smoke and dampness. On some nights, when exhaustion dulls everything else, that scent drifts up and pulls at distant thoughts of warmth and light. You do not dwell on them. Longing wastes energy. A small practical trick often used appears in your movements. You tuck the edge of your cloak beneath the straw, creating a barrier that traps heat and blocks drafts from below. Fabric and straw work together, imperfectly but effectively. This layering is essential. One material alone would fail. Together, they offer just enough protection. Your hands seek warmth instinctively, sliding between your thighs or under your arms. Fingers grow stiff quickly when exposed. You keep them hidden, trusting body heat to do its slow work. Toes are harder. You curl them, flexing gently, reminding yourself they still move. Scholars remain divided on whether people grew accustomed to sleeping on such surfaces or whether discomfort remained constant. Some argue the body adapted, muscles and joints adjusting over time. Others suggest chronic pain and stiffness were simply accepted as part of life. Lying here, you feel both truths. The straw no longer shocks you, but it never truly disappears beneath you either. You listen to the room as you wait for sleep to return. Breathing, animal sounds, the faint creak of wood. Straw absorbs much of this noise, softening footsteps and movement. It muffles the room, turning sharp sounds into dull whispers. In this way, it contributes to rest as much as warmth. Eventually, exhaustion claims more ground than discomfort. Your body settles into the shape it has carved into the bedding over countless nights. Straw yields where it must, holds where it can. Cold lingers at the edges, but it no longer commands your attention. As your thoughts slow, you accept the straw for what it is. It is not comfort in the way comfort is imagined. It is a tool, a simple one. It lifts you from frozen earth. It traps a little air. It offers the smallest cushion between bone and winter. That is enough. Sleep comes again, uneven but real, carried on the faint scent of fields long gone, and the quiet promise that morning will arrive whether you are ready or not. For now, straw holds you, and you let it, sinking gently into the fragile rest it provides. You wake slightly when cold touches your shoulder, not sharply, but like a reminder tapped gently against skin. Your cloak has shifted. The edge that once covered you has slipped away, and now winter has found a way back in. You do not curse or rush. You move slowly, deliberately, knowing that sudden motion will cost more warmth than it saves. It is broadly recognized in studies of medieval daily life that clothing doubled as bedding for most serfs, especially during winter. Cloaks, tunics, hoods, and extra layers of wool were not removed at night, but rearranged, folded, and wrapped around the body to trap heat. There were no separate sets of nightwear. What you worked in by day became what you slept in by night, carrying with it the smells of labor, smoke, and weather. You reach for the cloak now, fingers stiff but obedient. Wool resists at first, heavy with moisture and use, then slides back into place. The fabric is coarse, its surface uneven from countless repairs. Small patches mark places where it tore on tools or branches. Each stitch tells a story you barely remember, sewn during quieter months when fingers were warmer and light lasted longer. The weight of the cloak matters. It presses gently against you, reducing the space where cold air can circulate. Wool does not feel warm when you first touch it. It feels neutral, almost cool, but it holds heat once your body gives it time. You wait, breathing steadily, letting warmth build slowly rather than chasing it with restless movement. A small but telling habit reveals itself here. Many people folded their cloaks in specific ways for sleeping, doubling thickness over the chest or shoulders while leaving legs wrapped but lighter. Heat loss is greatest at the core. You know this without words. Generations have taught it through survival rather than explanation. Beneath the cloak, you wear a tunic, perhaps layered over another in colder regions. Linen rests closest to skin, smoother but unforgiving when damp. Wool lies above it, doing the real work of insulation. Your belt has been loosened but not removed. Removing it would require more movement, more exposure. Instead, it remains a quiet weight at your waist, another reminder that nothing truly stops at night. There is an overlooked detail often missing from popular images of medieval sleep. People rarely undressed fully, even in summer. In winter, clothing stayed on almost entirely. Modesty played a role, but warmth mattered more. Skin exposed to air loses heat quickly. Fabric slows that loss, even when worn thin. Your hood lies near your head. You pull it up slightly, covering ears and part of your face. Breath warms the fabric, and the fabric warms breath in return. The air you inhale feels less sharp now, softened by wool fibers. This small improvement allows you to relax just enough for sleep to return. The smell of your clothing surrounds you. Smoke from the hearth, animal scents from shared space, dampness from days spent in frost and field. These smells would overwhelm you if you thought about them too long. Instead, they blur into familiarity. They tell you where you are. They signal continuity. You slept in these clothes last night. You will likely sleep in them again tomorrow. There is no firm consensus among historians about how clean these garments were kept during winter. Some argue that clothing was aired and brushed regularly, even in cold months. Others believe washing was rare, postponed until warmer seasons. Your experience suggests a middle ground. Dirt is tolerated. Filth is managed when possible. Winter narrows options, but does not erase care entirely. Your feet remain a challenge. Even wrapped in wool, they are farthest from shared warmth. You draw them closer, tucking them beneath your calves or into folds of cloak. Some people sleep with their feet against another person's legs, sharing warmth without comment. Tonight, you manage alone, curling inward, making yourself smaller. A faint ache runs through your shoulders as you settle again. Hard work has left its mark. The cloak does little to cushion pressure points, but it prevents the worst of cold from seeping in. Pain is familiar enough that it fades into the background. Cold demands attention. Pain, less so. You listen to the room while waiting for warmth to rebuild. Breathing remains steady around you. Animals shift slightly, then go still again. Straw murmurs when someone adjusts. These sounds reassure you. The night continues. Life continues. There is ongoing discussion among researchers about whether medieval people experience sleep differently because of these conditions. Some suggest that lighter, fragmented sleep was common, shaped by discomfort and vigilance. Others propose that exhaustion overcame these obstacles, allowing deep rest despite hardship. As you lie here, you sense both forces at work. Sleep comes, but it is shallow, easily disturbed, always aware. Your hands finally grow warmer. You feel sensation return fully to your fingers. You flex them gently, once, then still them again. Movement costs heat. You have learned to wait for warmth rather than chase it. The cloak settles into place as your body relaxes. Its weight becomes comforting rather than burdensome. Wool scratches less when you stop moving. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of those around you. Heat pools slowly beneath fabric and flesh, fragile but real. Outside, winter remains unchanged. Frost thickens, snow deepens, wind moves on to test other walls. Inside, you have made your small adjustments, repaired your fragile defenses. Clothing becomes shelter, fabric becomes insulation. What you wear becomes what allows you to rest. Your thoughts drift, unmoored from detail. Images soften. The smell of wool and smoke fades into something almost soothing. Cold remains, but it no longer commands your attention. You have negotiated with it again, using nothing more than cloth, patience, and habit. Sleep returns, not as comfort, but as permission to let go for a while. Wrapped in patched wool and shared air, you sink back into the night, trusting your clothing to hold what little warmth you have until dawn finds you once more. The fire is no longer fire, it is memory. You can tell by the way the air feels as you inhale, by the absence of flicker on the walls, by the quiet that settles when flames finally surrender. Somewhere near the center of the room, beneath a shallow blanket of ash, embers sleep. They glow faintly when stirred, but no one stirs them now. Night has claimed its share of heat. What remains firmly established from period descriptions is that medieval peasant hearths were rarely kept burning through the entire night in winter. Fuel was precious. Wood took time and strength to gather, and both were limited when daylight was short and labor unrelenting. Fire was used to cook, to warm hands, to chase dampness from clothes. It was not wasted on hours when everyone lay still, conserving what warmth they already had. You remember the fire from earlier, its brief generosity. It warmed the room unevenly, touching faces and hands before escaping upward. Smoke curled into the thatch, carrying heat away even as it offered light. You warmed yourself while you could, knowing it would not last. Everyone did. Hands lingered longer than necessary. Cloaks were turned and turned again. Tools were set close to dry. When the fire dwindled, no one complained. Complaints do not make wood appear. A small but telling detail sits quietly in this moment. Many households banked their fires carefully, raking embers together and covering them with ash to keep them alive until morning. This was a skill learned early, practiced daily. A fire that could be coaxed back to life at dawn saved time and fuel. A fire allowed to die completely meant starting again from sparks, a task both tedious and risky. You glance toward the hearth without lifting your head. You can sense where it is by the faint warmth that lingers like a ghost. It is not enough to heat the room, but it changes the air slightly. The smell of ash and charcoal hangs low, sharp but familiar. Your eyes sting faintly, a reminder of smoke breathed in hours ago. The hearth itself is simple, a shallow pit or raised stone area, blackened from years of use. There is no chimney to guide smoke upward. It finds its own way out, seeping through roof and walls. Heat follows it, lifting away from those who need it most. You have accepted this imbalance as part of life. Fire is helpful, but it cannot be relied upon once night deepens. There is no single agreement among historians about how warm peasant homes became during winter evenings. Some estimates suggest temperatures rose briefly to tolerable levels near the hearth. Others argue that even at its peak, warmth was localized and fleeting. Lying here now, you know the truth your body remembers. Fire comforts while it burns. It does not solve the night. You adjust slightly, turning your back toward the hearth to capture what little warmth remains. It makes little difference, but habit guides you anyway. Habit is powerful. It fills the space where better options would be if they existed. The fire has another role beyond heat. Its earlier light pushed shadows back, made the room feel larger, safer. In darkness, the hut shrinks. Walls seem closer. The roof lowers in your imagination. You are more aware of sounds, of movement, of the cold pressing patiently from every side. Fire gave shape to the space. Without it, the night takes over. A faint crackle breaks the quiet. An ember shifts beneath ash, releasing a brief glow. You notice it without moving. That glow reassures you. It means morning fire is possible. It means warmth can return. The thought settles you, even as your body cools. Someone nearby sighs, turning slightly. The movement sends a ripple through straw. You hear the soft scrape of wool on earth. No one rises to feed the fire. Rising would mean exposing skin to cold, wasting heat built carefully over hours. Night is for stillness. Fire waits until dawn. Your breathing slows again, guided by the rhythm of those around you. Each inhale is cautious, each exhale measured. You have learned to breathe like this in winter, shallow enough to conserve warmth, deep enough to satisfy lungs. Breath fogs faintly in the dark, then vanishes. The hearth smells different now than it did earlier. Without flame, smoke sharpens, losing warmth and comfort. Ash carries a dry bitterness. You taste it faintly at the back of your throat. It is unpleasant, but it signals that fire has done its work for the day. It will be there again, waiting, patient as the cold. A small practical memory surfaces. On the coldest nights, some families slept in shifts, one person waking briefly to tend embers and then returning to rest. This was not common everywhere, and it depended on fuel supply and household size. Where it happened, it was a quiet act of care, passed between members without ceremony. Tonight, your household does not do this. Wood is scarce. Embers are trusted to survive alone. You think of morning without fully imagining it. Morning means movement. Movement means warmth. Chores will pull blood into limbs, easing stiffness. The fire will wake again, fed carefully, watched closely. These thoughts soothe you, not because they promise comfort, but because they promise change. The cold creeps back toward your shoulders. You pull your cloak tighter, tucking fabric beneath your chin. The hearth no longer helps. It has done all it can. You accept this without frustration. Fire is a visitor here, not a resident. Outside, winter holds steady. Inside, bodies hold what heat they have. The hearth rests, black and quiet, its work complete until dawn. You lie there, aware of its absence as much as its earlier presence. Sleep returns slowly, carried by exhaustion rather than warmth. Your mind drifts, images blurring around the idea of flame and light. You dream of glowing embers, of hands warmed briefly before retreating into sleeves. These dreams do not wake you. They carry you deeper. The fire is gone, but its memory remains, just enough to make the cold bearable. You sink into rest again, trusting that when light returns, someone will breathe life back into ash, and warmth will once more flicker through the room. For now, stillness holds, and you let it, resting in the quiet aftermath of flame. Smoke never truly leaves. Even now, long after the fire has settled into ash, it lingers in the air, thin but persistent, threading itself through every breath you take. You notice it most when you shift your head, when your nose brushes against wool and straw, and the smell sharpens for a moment before fading again. Smoke is part of the night, as constant as cold. Accounts from the period make one thing clear. Medieval peasant homes were rarely equipped with chimneys as you imagine them today. Smoke from the hearth drifted upward and escaped through gaps in the roof or small openings near the rafters. This design kept construction simple, but it meant that smoke shared the living space with people long after the fire itself dimmed. You lived in it. You slept in it. Your eyes sting faintly, even in darkness, not enough to force them open, but enough to remind you that the air is thick with residue from hours of burning wood, peat, or dried dung. Each fuel leaves its own signature. Wood smoke is sharp and resinous. Peat carries a heavier, earthy scent. Dung smoke is acrid, clinging, impossible to forget. Tonight, the smell suggests wood, perhaps mixed with something else when supplies ran low. You turn your face slightly into your cloak, filtering the air before it reaches your lungs. Wool traps warmth, but it also softens smoke, catching particles that would otherwise bite at your throat. Breathing through fabric has become instinctive. You learned it young, long before anyone explained why it helped. A detail often overlooked reveals itself here. Smoke did more than irritate. Over time, it helped preserve the structure of the house. The tar and soot that blackened beams and thatch discouraged insects and slowed decay. What made breathing uncomfortable quietly strengthened the home. The trade was accepted without much thought. Survival required compromises that touched every sense. You cough once, quietly, the sound muffled as you turn away. A cough wastes heat and draws attention, but sometimes it cannot be avoided. You wait a moment, holding still, listening for any sign that you have disturbed others. The room remains steady. Breathing continues around you. No one wakes. The air feels heavier near the roof, where smoke gathers before drifting out. Lower down, where you lie, it thins slightly, but never disappears. You can taste it faintly, metallic and dry. It coats your tongue and the back of your throat. By morning, you will notice it again when you swallow, a subtle soreness that fades as the day goes on. There is ongoing discussion among historians about how prolonged exposure to smoke affected health in medieval households. Some researchers point to respiratory issues and eye irritation as common problems. Others suggest that people adapted, their bodies growing more tolerant over time. Lying here, breathing shallowly, you suspect both are true. Adaptation does not mean absence of harm, it means learning to live alongside it. The smoke also shapes sound. It absorbs and softens, dulling sharp noises, making the room feel quieter than it might otherwise be. Footsteps become whispers. Shifting straw loses its edge. This muffling effect contributes to the strange calm of the night. Even discomfort has a way of settling into something almost soothing when wrapped in quiet. You think briefly of mornings, of how smoke behaves differently then. Fire wakes fully, sending fresh plumes upward. Sunlight cuts through haze, revealing particles drifting lazily in the air. At night, without light, smoke becomes invisible but no less present. You feel it rather than see it. Your chest rises and falls slowly. You keep your breaths measured, avoiding deep inhalations that would draw smoke deeper into your lungs. This careful breathing conserves warmth as well. Cold and smoke work together to teach restraint. You learn not to rush anything in winter, not even air. Nearby, an animal exhales, its breath warmer and heavier than yours. That warmth mixes with smoke, creating a layered atmosphere that feels dense but protective. The room becomes its own small climate, shaped by bodies, embers, and residue. Outside, air feels distant, almost unreal. A minor but telling habit surfaces in memory. Some families hung damp cloth near the hearth in winter, believing it helped settle smoke and ease breathing. Whether it worked well or simply provided comfort is uncertain. What matters is the intention. People noticed the smoke. They sought ways to live with it, even if solutions were imperfect. You swallow, feeling dryness in your throat. Moisture is scarce in winter air. Smoke worsens that dryness, pulling water from skin and breath. Lips crack, throats ache. These sensations fade into the background of daily life, noticed but rarely discussed. Complaining does not change the air. Academic opinion remains split on whether the benefits of smoke preservation outweighed its health costs. Some see it as an unavoidable side effect of hearth-centered living. Others argue it shaped architecture over time, eventually driving the development of chimneys and improved ventilation. For you, tonight, these debates are distant. Smoke simply is. You shift your head again, finding a position where breathing feels easiest. Perhaps there is a subtle current here, a path where air moves just enough to thin the haze. You settle into it, holding still. The irritation eases slightly. Small victories matter. The smell of smoke blends with other scents now. Wool, straw, animal hide, earth. Together, they form the signature of home. It is not pleasant in a simple sense, but it is familiar. Familiarity brings calm. Calm allows sleep. Your thoughts slow as your body adjusts. The sting in your eyes dulls. Your throat relaxes. Breathing becomes automatic again. Smoke fades from focus, though it never truly leaves. It wraps the night in a thin veil, softening edges, blurring discomfort just enough to let rest take hold. As you drift deeper, you accept the air as it is. Clear air belongs to other places, other lives. Here, smoke marks shelter, warmth, and human presence. It is the price paid for fire, for cooked food, for a house that stands through winter. Sleep settles over you once more, fragile but real. Smoke floats above and around you, unseen and constant. You breathe it in, then out again, slowly, carefully, until even that awareness dissolves. The night continues, held together by ash, breath, and the quiet endurance of those who know no other way. Night does not end all at once. It loosens its grip slowly, releasing time in uneven pieces. Your sleep follows the same pattern. You drift under, then rise again, never fully awake, never completely gone. This rhythm is not an accident. It is shaped by cold, by darkness, and by the simple fact that your body cannot afford to relax too deeply for too long. What historical descriptions consistently suggest is that medieval sleep often followed patterns unlike modern expectations. Many people did not experience one long, uninterrupted stretch of rest. Instead, sleep arrived in segments, broken by brief periods of wakefulness. These pauses were not always dramatic. Sometimes they were little more than moments of awareness, like the one you are in now, when your eyes remain closed, but your mind stirs. You lie still, listening. The room sounds different at this hour. Breathing is slower. Even the animals seem heavier in their rest. The wind outside has softened, or perhaps your senses have dulled enough that it no longer demands attention. Cold remains, steady and patient, but it no longer surprises you. Your body has adjusted its expectations. You shift your weight slightly, testing stiffness in your joints. The movement sends a quiet ripple through straw. You stop immediately, holding still again. The brief motion has cost warmth, and you feel the loss along your spine. This is the balance you manage all night. Move too little, and pain builds. Move too much, and cold returns with interest. A small but revealing habit emerges in these quiet intervals. When sleep loosens its hold, people often check their bodies without opening their eyes. Fingers flexed gently, toes curled, a shoulder rolled just enough to release tension. These movements were careful and economical, learned through experience. They kept circulation moving without inviting the cold too deeply. Your mind wanders, unanchored by dreams. Thoughts drift towards simple things, the feel of straw, the smell of smoke, the warmth near the animals. You do not think of tomorrow in detail. Thinking costs energy. Instead, your mind circles familiar sensations, as if reassuring itself that nothing has changed. There is ongoing scholarly discussion about whether these waking moments were used intentionally. Some suggest people prayed, talked quietly, or tended the fire during these intervals. Others argue that many simply lay still, waiting for sleep to return. You do the latter. Prayer requires focus. Speech requires breath. Stillness requires only patience. The darkness is complete. There is no moonlight inside the hut, no glow from embers strong enough to guide sight. Your world is defined by touch and sound. You feel the rough weave of wool against your cheek, You hear a slow exhale nearby. You sense the presence of others without seeing them. This sensory narrowing is calming in its own way. Cold presses gently against your back again. You pull your cloak tighter, tucking fabric beneath your shoulder. The movement is small but practiced. You have performed it countless times. Each adjustment becomes part of a routine, repeated until it feels automatic. Habit replaces thought. A point of quiet debate among historians centers on how restful such sleep truly was. Some argue that fragmented sleep left people perpetually tired. Others note that physical labor and limited light likely deepened rest whenever it came. Even if broken, lying here, you feel both ideas settle into you. You are tired, deeply so. And yet, when sleep returns, it claims you fully, even if briefly. You notice your breathing again. It has grown shallow, almost imperceptible. This conserves warmth. It also reduces irritation from smoke. Your chest rises just enough to satisfy your lungs. Your body has learned this balance over years, guided by discomfort rather than instruction. Nearby, someone turns slightly, releasing a soft sigh. The sound passes through the room without causing alarm. No one stirs in response. Shared space teaches tolerance. Small noises are accepted. They signal life, not danger. Time stretches. You are not sure how long you lie there. Minutes blur into something softer. The mind loses its grip on measurement. This timelessness is part of the night's character. Without clocks, without light, you experience time through sensation alone. Cold deepens, then eases slightly. Breathing slows, then steadies. Sleep ebbs and flows. A quiet detail surfaces as you rest in this in-between state. Some households marked these waking moments by tending small tasks, like adjusting bedding or checking animals. These acts were subtle, done by feel, guided by memory. You consider doing the same, but decide against it. Everything feels stable enough. Stability is precious. Your muscles relax again as sleep edges closer. The ache in your shoulders dulls. The straw beneath you warms slightly, reshaped by your body heat. You settle into that shallow hollow, letting stillness reclaim you. Dreams return, lighter this time. They do not carry clear images. Instead, they feel like impressions, warmth, weight, darkness, the steady rhythm of breath. These dreams blend seamlessly with waking awareness, making it hard to tell where one ends and the other begins. Cold never leaves entirely. It hovers at the edge of sensation, ready to pull you back if you move too much or lose focus. You accept its presence. Fighting it would only exhaust you. Acceptance conserves strength. As sleep deepens again, your mind lets go of its gentle watchfulness. You trust the room, the shared warmth, the habits that have carried you through countless nights like this. The walls hold, the roof holds, bodies hold their heat close. This cycle repeats itself quietly through the night. Sleep, waking, adjustment, stillness. Each phase prepares you for the next. By the time dawn approaches, you will have rested enough, not because conditions improved, but because your body adapted. For now, you drift again, suspended in that familiar balance between rest and vigilance. Night continues its slow unraveling, and you follow its pace, breath by careful breath, sinking once more into the shallow, necessary sleep that winter allows. Hunger waits for you before sleep fully releases its hold. It does not arrive as pain, not sharply, not urgently. It is a hollow awareness that settles in your belly and stays there, quiet but persistent. Winter has thinned meals, stretched stores, and taught your body to expect less. When you wake during the night, hunger is there with you, another presence sharing the dark. What surviving records make plain is that winter diets for medieval serfs were limited and repetitive, relying heavily on grains, preserved vegetables, and whatever salted or dried food remained from earlier seasons. Fresh food was rare, calories mattered more than variety. Even so, portions often shrank as winter dragged on, and many people went to sleep without feeling fully satisfied. You remember the evening meal. It was warm, which mattered, but modest. A thick pottage, perhaps, made from grains and legumes, stretched with water and flavored lightly, if anything extra was available. Bread, coarse and dark, heavy with bran, maybe a small piece of salted meat if the household had planned well. You ate slowly, knowing it had to last. Winter teaches restraint at the table as well as in bed. Now, hours later, your stomach reminds you that warmth burns fuel. Keeping your body alive through the night costs energy, and energy must come from somewhere. You press your forearm lightly against your abdomen, a reflexive gesture that does nothing but comfort. Hunger is familiar enough that it no longer frightens you. It simply exists. A small, often overlooked detail deepens this moment. Many people deliberately ate heavier foods in the evening during winter, not for pleasure, but to carry warmth through the night. Fat and dense grains burned slower, releasing energy gradually. When such food was available, it was saved for later hours. When it was not, hunger became another thing to endure quietly. You swallow, feeling dryness in your throat. Hunger and thirst blur together in winter. Water is cold, sometimes frozen. Drinking too much before sleep can chill the body further. You take only what is needed earlier in the evening, then rely on habit and patience through the night. Your body has learned to ration even its own demands. There is no full agreement among historians about how widespread chronic hunger was during medieval winters. Some suggest that most households managed to get by, even if barely. Others argue that seasonal hunger was common and expected, a regular part of life for the rural poor. Lying here, feeling the hollow weight inside you, the debate feels unnecessary. Hunger is real enough tonight. It shapes your sleep. An empty stomach sharpens awareness, making rest lighter, dreams thinner. You notice this difference compared to nights when food was more plentiful. Those nights feel heavier, slower. This one keeps you closer to the surface of sleep, ready to wake at small disturbances. You shift slightly, curling your knees closer to your chest. This position feels protective, conserving warmth and easing the sensation in your belly. Many sleep this way, drawn inward by both cold and hunger. The body makes itself smaller when resources are scarce. Nearby, someone breathes unevenly, perhaps dreaming, perhaps restless for the same reason. Hunger does not belong to you alone. It moves through the room, shared but unspoken. No one mentions it. Naming hunger does not make it leave. You think briefly of spring, not in detail, but as a feeling. Green shoots, fresh food, longer days. The thought brings a faint warmth, not physical, but mental. You do not dwell on it. Hope can be comforting, but it can also sharpen longing. Winter teaches you to keep hope distant, like a light seen far away, but not approached too quickly. A quiet habit surfaces in memory. Some families kept a small piece of bread or a crust nearby at night, reserved for children or the sick, if hunger woke them too sharply. This was not common, and it was not always possible. Where it existed, it was a fragile safety net. Tonight, there is nothing like that within reach. You accept this without bitterness. Your body adapts in subtle ways. Hunger dulls after a while, replaced by a steady, low awareness. It no longer demands attention. It becomes part of the background, like cold or smoke. The body learns which sensations are urgent and which can be set aside. Scholars continue to discuss how nutrition affected sleep quality and health in medieval populations. Some point to cycles of feast and scarcity, shaping physical resilience. Others note the toll taken by repeated deprivation. As you lie here, these questions feel far removed. Tonight is not about long-term effects. It is about making it to morning. You breathe slowly, letting the rhythm distract you from the hollow feeling. Breath warms the chest. Stillness conserves energy. You avoid thinking about food too vividly, knowing that imagination can sharpen desire. Instead, you focus on sensation. Wool against skin, straw beneath you, the steady presence of others nearby. Eventually, hunger loosens its grip slightly, not because it is satisfied, but because exhaustion weighs heavier. Sleep edges closer again, thin but persistent. You allow it to take you, even knowing it may not last long. Dreams come, shaped faintly by hunger. Images of bread, of steam rising from bowls, of hands breaking crusts. These dreams are gentle, not cruel. They do not wake you, they pass through, leaving only a soft ache behind. Your stomach settles into quiet. The night continues. Hunger remains, but it no longer commands the moment. You have learned how to share space with it, just as you share space with cold, smoke, and darkness. As sleep deepens once more, you accept this small victory. Not comfort, but endurance. Not fullness, but balance. Winter has not been defeated. It has been managed, hour by hour, breath by breath. And for now, that is enough. Sound carries differently in winter nights. You notice it as sleep loosens again, not because something loud happens, but because even the smallest noise feels close, intimate, as if it brushes past your ear before fading. The village rests under frost, and that stillness sharpens every sound that dares to move through it. What village life consistently reveals is that medieval communities were tightly packed, with homes close enough that sounds travelled easily, especially at night when daytime activity ceased. During winter, when windows were shuttered and people stayed indoors, the village did not fall silent so much as it breathed quietly together. You hear it now, if you listen closely. The door creaks somewhere beyond your wall, slow and careful. Someone has risen, perhaps to check animals, perhaps because sleep has slipped away entirely. Footsteps follow, muffled by snow, each one softened as if wrapped in cloth. You imagine the sound travelling across the frozen ground, bouncing gently between houses before dissolving into the dark. Inside your own space, noise is constant, but subdued. Breathing, the faint rustle of straw, the occasional scrape of wool against earth. These sounds weave together into something like a rhythm. You have grown accustomed to it. In fact, silence would feel unsettling now, a sign that something has gone wrong. A small but revealing detail becomes clear in these moments. People learn to recognize their neighbors by sound alone. A particular cough, a familiar footstep, the way a door hinges complained when opened. At night, when sight failed, sound carried identity. You know who moves outside without needing to see them. You hear an animal snort softly, then settle again. The sound is heavy, reassuring. Livestock that rest quietly are healthy. Healthy animals mean warmth and food and labor when morning comes. Their sounds blend with human ones, forming a shared language of survival that requires no words. The cold itself makes noise. Wood contracts, releasing small pops from beams and walls. Thatch shifts as frost deepens. These sounds are sharp at first, then fade into familiarity. You no longer flinch when you hear them. They are part of the structure, speaking, adjusting to winter's grip. Scholars continue to discuss how sound shaped communal awareness in medieval villages. Some argue that constant auditory connection strengthened social bonds, making people more attuned to each other's presence. Others suggest it was simply unavoidable, an effect of close living rather than intention. Lying here, you feel the connection without analyzing it. The village is near. You are not alone. A dog barks once in the distance, abrupt and clear in the cold air. It stops just as suddenly. Perhaps it sensed movement, perhaps only a shadow. Dogs serve as early warning in winter, alert to strangers or wandering animals. Their voices carry far at night, cutting through frost and snow. You remain still, listening. No one stirs in response. One bark is not cause for alarm. If danger approached, the sound would persist. Experience has taught everyone the difference. You relax again, letting the moment pass. Wind brushes past the hut, not strong enough to howl, but firm enough to whisper through cracks. It carries distant sounds with it, faint echoes of movement from other parts of the village. A cough, a low murmur, the soft knock of wood against wood as someone secures a shutter more tightly. Inside, the shared space responds subtly. Someone shifts, adjusting their cloak. Straw murmurs. Another breath deepens, then evens out. These reactions are unconscious, the body responding to sound even when the mind remains half asleep. There is no clear boundary between inside and outside at night. Sound flows freely, reminding you that walls are thin, that shelter is relative. You do not resent this. Awareness feels safer than isolation. Hearing others confirms that the world continues beyond your small circle of warmth. A quiet habit reveals itself again. People learn to judge time by sound. The rhythm of night changes as hours pass. Early night carries more movement, more adjustment. Deep night grows heavier, quieter. Near dawn, sound returns slowly as people stir. You are somewhere in the middle now, where stillness dominates but awareness lingers. You close your eyes more firmly, not to shut sound out, but to let it pass through without pulling you fully awake. This skill takes years to learn, to hear without reacting, to register without rising. Winter teaches it patiently. Academic discussion remains open about whether this constant awareness disrupted sleep or enhanced it. Some suggest people slept lightly, always ready to wake. Others believe familiarity dulled the impact, allowing rest despite noise. Your body answers this question quietly. You rest not because sound disappears, but because it becomes predictable. Another sound reaches you, closer this time. A soft murmur from a neighboring house, perhaps someone speaking briefly before returning to sleep. Words are indistinct, carried by frost, stripped of meaning. Only tone remains. Calm. Ordinary. Safe. You breathe out slowly, letting the sound settle your nerves rather than disturb them. Night is doing what it always does, testing boundaries, reminding everyone of proximity. You accept it as part of the rhythm. Eventually, even these faint noises fade into the background. Your mind stops cataloguing them. They become part of the texture of sleep, like straw beneath you or wool against your cheek. Awareness softens. As you drift again, the village continues its quiet conversation with itself. Doors creak, beams shift, breath rises and falls, sound stitches the night together, binding each small household into something larger. You sink back into rest, comforted not by silence, but by presence. Winter surrounds the village, cold and patient, but within it, life murmurs softly, refusing to vanish. You listen without listening now, letting the familiar chorus carry you deeper into sleep, knowing that as long as sound remains, so does warmth, so does community, so does the promise of morning. You never fully undress for the night. Even now, wrapped in sleep that comes and goes, you remain dressed much as you were when darkness fell. Cloth presses against skin in familiar layers, stiff in places, softened in others by long use. Winter has taught you that removing clothing is a luxury you cannot afford, not when warmth must be held like a fragile thing. What everyday evidence from medieval rural life makes unmistakably clear is that people slept clothed throughout much of the year, and almost without exception during winter. Tunics, hose, cloaks, and hoods stayed on, loosened perhaps, rearranged carefully, but never fully set aside. Night did not mark a break from labor or exposure, it simply reshaped them. You feel the weight of fabric on your body now. The tunic beneath your cloak is worn thin at the shoulders, the weave slightly looser where years of movement have stretched it. Linen lies closest to your skin, cooler and smoother, but quick to steal warmth when damp. Wool above it does the real work, trapping heat slowly, stubbornly, asking only that you remain still long enough for it to succeed. Your belt remains around your waist, loosened just enough to ease breathing. Removing it would mean shifting too much, exposing skin, risking a chill that would linger far longer than any discomfort caused by leather pressing into your side. You accept the pressure. You have slept this way countless times before. A small but telling habit appears in the way clothing is arranged. Sleeves are pulled down over hands when possible. Hose are drawn high and tucked into tunics. Cloaks are folded strategically, doubled over the chest or shoulders where heat escapes fastest. You learned these techniques without instruction. They were shown through example, corrected gently, refined through cold nights like this one. Your hood lies partially over your head, covering ears and the back of your neck. You pull it forward slightly, breathing through the fabric. The air warms as it passes, losing its sharp edge before reaching your lungs. This simple act brings relief, subtle but real. You hold the position, careful not to disturb it. The smell of your clothing surrounds you. Smoke from the hearth clings to wool, sharp and persistent. There is also the faint scent of damp earth, of animal hide, of days spent working in frost-stiffened fields. These smells are not pleasant in any simple way, but they are reassuring. They tell you that these clothes have served you well, that they have protected you through other nights like this one. There is no full agreement among historians about how often winter clothing was cleaned. Some suggest garments were aired regularly when weather allowed, brushed free of dirt and ash. Others argue that washing was rare during cold months, postponed until spring when water was less punishing. Your experience sits somewhere between. You care for what you have when you can. Winter narrows options, but it does not erase them entirely. You shift slightly, testing how fabric moves with you. Wool resists at first, then settles again. The weight becomes comforting, like a hand resting gently on your shoulder. Heavy clothing restricts movement, but that restriction helps. Less movement means less heat lost. You learn to welcome stillness. Your feet remain wrapped in layers, hose thickened by patches, sometimes doubled if supplies allow. Even so, they chill easily. You draw them closer, tucking them beneath your calves or into folds of cloak. This position curls your body inward, protecting the core. Many sleep this way in winter, shaped by cold into compact forms. A quiet observation surfaces here. Clothing at night serves not just to warm, but to signal readiness. Even in sleep, you are dressed to rise quickly if needed. Fire could need tending. An animal could stir. A sound outside could demand attention. Being clothed means you are never fully unprepared. Winter nights do not allow deep vulnerability. Scholars remain divided on whether this constant readiness affected rest. Some argue it kept sleep shallow and fragmented. Others suggest that familiarity dulled its impact, allowing people to rest despite it. As you lie here, you feel both truths. You are always slightly alert, and yet exhaustion pulls you under again and again. Your hands, wrapped in sleeves, grow warmer slowly. You feel sensation return fully to your fingers. You flex them once, then still them again. Movement wastes warmth. Patience preserves it. Nearby, someone shifts, their clothing brushing against straw. The sound is soft, almost soothing. You recognize it instantly. Cloth on cloth, wool on earth. It is the sound of shared endurance, of many bodies wrapped against the same cold. The weight of clothing presses you gently into the straw beneath. It flattens it further, shaping the hollow you have made over countless nights. This shape fits you now. Your body settles into it without thought, guided by memory rather than comfort. You breathe slowly, letting warmth build beneath layers. It takes time. Wool does not offer instant relief. It rewards stillness. You wait, counting breaths without numbers, feeling heat pool gradually around your chest and back. Outside, winter continues its quiet work. Frost thickens, snow settles, wind tests walls and moves on. Inside, clothing becomes shelter. Fabric becomes insulation. What you wear becomes the difference between rest and shivering wakefulness. Your thoughts drift again, less anchored now. The sensation of cloth fades into background awareness. You are no longer cataloguing textures or smells. They merge into a single impression of being held, constrained but protected. Sleep deepens, uneven but persistent. You sink into it not because you are comfortable, but because your body has learned how to rest within constraint. Clothing does not promise ease, it promises survival. As you drift, you carry this quiet knowledge with you. Winter does not strip you bare. It wraps you in layers of necessity. Cloth against skin, wool against air, habit against cold. You rest again, dressed and ready, trusting fabric and patience to guard what warmth you have until dawn loosens winter's grip just a little more. You feel the arrangement before you think about it. Bodies placed with intention, not comfort. The night has shaped this pattern slowly, refined it through loss and survival, until it feels natural enough that no one questions it. In winter, warmth is shared deliberately, and those who need it most are placed where it gathers best. What household accounts and physical evidence make clear is that medieval families arranged sleeping positions carefully during cold months, prioritizing children and elders. Smaller bodies lost heat faster, older bodies generated less. They were placed between adults, away from drafts, closer to lingering warmth. This was not sentiment. It was necessity, practiced quietly, night after night. You lie close enough to feel another person's back rise and fall. The warmth is subtle but steady, a quiet exchange that requires no movement. Shared heat pools between bodies, held there by layers of wool and stillness. You adjust slightly, careful not to disturb the balance. Everyone understands this unspoken agreement. No one pulls away unless they must. A child shifts nearby, restless for a moment, then settles again. An adult's arm moves instinctively, creating a barrier against cold air. These motions are gentle, practiced, often happening without full waking. Care continues even in sleep. Winter demands it. There is a detail often missed when imagining these nights. Elders are not placed apart out of respect for privacy. They are placed where warmth is strongest, because cold threatens them first. Their breathing may be slower, shallower, their bodies thinner. Heat matters more than space. You know this without explanation. Everyone does. You remember being smaller, lighter, placed carefully between stronger bodies. The memory surfaces briefly, not as a story, but as a sensation. Warmth from both sides, a sense of being held by the room itself. Now, you are one of the bodies providing that warmth, a quiet responsibility accepted without words. Scholarly discussion continues about how such close sleeping arrangements shaped family bonds. Some suggest it fostered deep attachment and awareness. Others argue it was simply practical, its emotional meaning shaped later by memory. Lying here, you feel the closeness without labeling it. It is neither tender nor cold. It is necessary. The arrangement also protects against drafts. Bodies form a barrier, blocking cold air that creeps along the floor and walls. You can feel the difference clearly. Where bodies cluster, air feels heavier, warmer. At the edges, cold waits. No one chooses the edges unless they must. Your breathing adjusts to match those around you. Slow, shallow, coordinated without intention. This shared rhythm steadies the room, creating a sense of calm that helps sleep deepen. You let yourself follow it, allowing your chest to rise and fall in time. A quiet sound escapes someone's mouth, a soft murmur or half-formed word. Perhaps a dream, perhaps memory. It fades quickly, swallowed by wool and straw. No one responds. Dreams belong to the dreamer. Wakefulness belongs to morning. You feel a gentle pressure against your shoulder as someone leans closer for warmth. You accept it, shifting slightly to make room. These movements are careful, precise, guided by habit rather than thought. Everyone knows how far to move, when to stop. There is no full consensus among historians about whether such closeness increased the spread of illness. Some argue it did, especially during epidemics. Others note that winter isolation and limited contact outside the household may have reduced risk. Tonight, such questions feel distant. Warmth takes priority over speculation. The presence of elders brings a different quality to the night. Their breathing may rasp slightly. Their sleep may be lighter. You remain aware of them even as you rest. This awareness is not anxious. It is attentive. Winter trains you to listen for subtle changes. You notice the weight of your clothing again, how it presses against shared warmth, trapping it between bodies. Wool against wool creates friction, slowing air movement, holding heat longer. Fabric becomes part of the arrangement, as important as flesh. Your legs are bent, knees drawn in. This position reduces exposure and allows closer contact. It is not graceful. It is efficient. You have slept this way for so many winters that your body finds it automatically. A small but revealing habit emerges here. People often slept with hands tucked beneath another's arm or between bodies, not for affection, but to keep fingers from freezing. Touch becomes functional. Intimacy is shaped by need rather than choice. Outside, the night presses on, indifferent. Inside, this small cluster of bodies holds steady. Heat circulates slowly, shared and conserved. The room feels smaller, but safer. Your thoughts soften as sleep deepens again. The presence of others steadies you. You are not alone with the cold. You are part of a careful arrangement that has worked before and will work again. As you drift, you sense the quiet strength of this shared endurance. Children protected, elders warmed, adults bearing weight without complaint. Winter has forced this pattern into being, but it has also sustained life through countless nights like this one. You breathe out slowly, letting the shared warmth carry you. Cold remains at the edges, but it does not break through. Not tonight. The arrangement holds. And within it, you rest, suspended between duty and sleep, until morning begins its slow return. Cold has a way of making you listen to your own body more closely. In the dark, wrapped in shared warmth, you notice every small change. A tightness in the chest, a scratch at the back of the throat, a stiffness that feels deeper than the usual ache of labor. Winter teaches you to pay attention, because illness does not announce itself loudly at first. It whispers. What medical writings and parish records from the period make evident is that winter brought a rise in sickness among rural communities. Coughs lingered, fevers crept in quietly, joints stiffened and refused to loosen. Cold, weakened bodies already worn thin by hunger and work. There were no clear lines between being tired, being cold, and being ill. Often, people only realized something was wrong when it was already serious. You lie still now, breathing carefully, listening not just to others, but to yourself. Your breath feels steady enough. Your chest rises without pain. That is good. You take another slow inhale, then exhale through wool. The air stings slightly, but it always does. You tell yourself this is normal. Reassurance becomes part of survival. Nearby, someone coughs. It is dry and short, then suppressed quickly. The sound carries weight in the dark. Coughs mean many things. Smoke irritation, cold air, or something more. You do not ask. Questions do not help at this hour. You simply listen for the next breath, for the rhythm to resume. When it does, tension eases slightly. A small but telling detail surfaces here. People learn to recognize the difference between harmless discomfort and dangerous illness through sound alone. A wet cough, a rattling breath, the absence of sound where breathing should be. At night, these signs mattered more than daylight symptoms. You catalogue them quietly, not out of fear, but habit. Winter illnesses are feared not just for their severity, but for their timing. Cold makes recovery harder, rest is limited, work does not stop easily, even when bodies falter. You know this. Everyone does. That knowledge hums beneath the night, a low anxiety never fully spoken. There is continued discussion among historians about how communities understood disease in this period. Some argue illness was seen primarily as imbalance or environmental effect. Others point to spiritual interpretations, where sickness carried moral meaning. Lying here, listening to breath and cough, these frameworks feel distant. What matters is whether someone can rise in the morning. You feel warmth near your chest and shoulders, shared heat easing tension slightly. It helps. Warmth does not cure illness, but it can keep it from worsening. This belief is deeply rooted, practiced without question. You hold still, guarding your warmth, trusting it to protect you as much as it can. A whispered sound reaches you, barely audible. Perhaps someone murmuring a prayer, lips moving quietly in the dark. It could be for themselves. It could be for someone else. Prayer at night is often wordless, more breath than speech. You do not join aloud, but you feel the impulse. Hope is another layer people wrap around themselves in winter. There is a practical side to these fears as well. If someone becomes truly ill, the household must adjust. Positions change. Heat is redirected. Food is allocated carefully. Care takes time and energy, already in short supply. You sense this unspoken calculus in the way bodies remain alert even as they rest. A faint ache in your own joints reminds you of past winters, times when stiffness lingered longer than usual, when fingers refused to bend easily in the morning. These memories surface briefly, then fade. Dwelling on them would invite worry, and worry wastes warmth. Scholars still discuss how resilient medieval bodies were in the face of repeated hardship. Some suggest constant exposure strengthened endurance. Others note high mortality rates as evidence of vulnerability. Both can be true. Resilience does not guarantee survival. It only improves the odds. You hear an elder's breathing nearby, slow and uneven. You listen carefully, counting without numbers. Inhale, exhale, pause, inhale again. The pattern continues. You relax slightly. For now, it is enough. The cold presses gently against your back again, a reminder that stillness cannot last forever. You shift just enough to ease pressure, careful not to disturb shared warmth. Movement sends a ripple through the cluster, but it settles quickly. No one wakes fully. Night continues. A small, often overlooked habit comes to mind. People kept simple remedies close during winter. A pouch of herbs, a bit of honey saved carefully, a strip of cloth warmed near embers earlier in the evening. These were not cures, but comforts. Their presence offered reassurance. Tonight, you rely on warmth and breath alone. You notice the smoke in the air again, how it catches slightly in your throat. You swallow, testing whether irritation lingers. It does, but not worse than usual. Smoke is a known discomfort. Illness is more uncertain. You prefer the familiar sting to the unknown ache. Outside, the night remains still. Snow absorbs sound. Frost holds everything in place. Inside, bodies breathe, cough occasionally, shift and settle. This is the soundtrack of winter survival. There is no dramatic fear here, no sudden panic. Fear moves quietly, woven into awareness rather than shouted. It shapes how you listen, how you breathe, how you hold yourself. It keeps you attentive without keeping you awake. As sleep edges closer again, you let vigilance soften slightly. You trust the shared space to alert you if something changes. You trust habit and warmth, and the simple fact that morning has come before and will come again. Cold illnesses linger at the edge of thought, acknowledged but not invited in. You rest anyway. Rest itself is a defense, fragile but necessary. Your body settles, muscles loosening just enough to allow sleep. Breathing deepens. Awareness fades. Fear does not disappear, but it quiets, satisfied for now that nothing has crossed the line from discomfort into danger. Winter watches, patient and impersonal. You drift again, carrying this careful balance with you, attentive without alarm, concerned without panic, wrapped in warmth, listening for breath, trusting that for this night at least, illness remains a whisper and not a shout. When the cold settles deepest, belief slips quietly into the space left by certainty. You feel it now, not as a sudden thought, but as a presence that has always been here, waiting for the night to grow long enough. Winter weakens walls and bodies alike. When tools and warmth reach their limits, people turn inward, toward meanings that promise protection when none can be proven. What period sources and folklore traditions clearly indicate is that medieval rural life was threaded through with belief, especially during winter. Nights were seen as vulnerable times. Darkness hid dangers both real and imagined. Sleep itself felt exposed. In response, people carried small rituals into the night, gestures meant to guard the body when waking strength faded. You lie still, but you know these rituals well. Some are spoken, others only thought. A short prayer murmured into wool. A familiar phrase repeated silently until breath slows. These words are not grand. They are practical, shaped by repetition rather than theology. Their purpose is not explanation, it is comfort. Nearby, you hear a faint whisper, barely more than breath moving through lips. Someone is praying quietly, careful not to wake others. The sound is soft, rhythmic, and steady. It blends into the breathing of the room, indistinguishable unless you are listening for it. You do not turn your head. You do not respond. Respect here is silence. A subtle but telling detail appears in these moments. Many people kept small objects close while sleeping in winter. A wooden cross worn smooth by touch, a pouch of dried herbs tied with twine, a scrap of cloth from a loved one. These items were not displayed. They were tucked beneath clothing, pressed against skin, warmed by the body. You have something similar, though you rarely think of it until nights like this. Your fingers brush against it now, hidden beneath your tunic. You do not pull it out. You do not examine it. Touch alone is enough. The familiarity steadies you, easing tension in your chest. Whether it truly protects you is not the question. It makes you feel less alone, and that matters. There is no consensus among scholars about how people understood the effectiveness of such charms. Some argue they were symbolic, expressions of hope rather than expectation. Others suggest belief was literal, deeply held, shaping how people interpreted survival and loss. Lying here, you suspect belief exists somewhere between. It comforts whether or not it saves. Winter encourages superstition. Shadows stretch longer. Sounds seem sharper. Illness arrives without warning. When cause and effect blur, meaning fills the gap. You remember stories told during darker months, tales of spirits that roam in cold air, warnings about nights when doors should stay shut, advice passed down quietly, often beginning with the same phrase, better to be careful. You do not feel afraid. Exactly. Fear is sharper, louder. What you feel is awareness, a sense that night requires respect. You adjust your cloak slightly, tucking it more securely around your shoulders. The movement is small, but it feels deliberate, as though you are sealing yourself in. A prayer forms in your mind, familiar enough that it requires no effort. You do not rush through it. You let each word settle, timed to breath. Inhale. Phrase. Exhale. Phrase. The rhythm slows your thoughts, easing you back toward rest. Prayer here is not performance. It is pacing. Others in the room follow their own patterns. Some murmur words you recognize. Others press lips together, silent but intent. Some do nothing at all, trusting habit and warmth rather than ritual. All of these approaches coexist easily. Winter does not demand uniformity, it demands endurance. A curious practice appears in memory. In some households, people mark doorways or beds with simple symbols during harsh weather. Chalk lines, carved signs. These marks were renewed as needed, sometimes weekly, sometimes daily. Whether they truly protected anything is uncertain. What is clear is that they offered reassurance in a season that offered little. You think briefly of dawn, not as a time of light, but as a threshold. Night holds unknowns. Day brings tasks and clarity. Surviving the night feels like an achievement, even before it ends. Belief helps bridge that gap, carrying you through hours when control feels thin. There is ongoing discussion among historians about how belief systems functioned alongside practical knowledge. Some argue ritual and reason existed in tension. Others suggest they worked together, each addressing different needs. Lying here, wrapped in wool and darkness, you feel no conflict. You rely on both. You trust the roof to hold. You trust warmth to help. And you allow belief to soften what neither can fully manage. A soft sound draws your attention again. Someone sighs deeply, then settles. The sigh carries relief, not distress. Perhaps a prayer has ended. Perhaps sleep has returned. The room responds, breathing evening out, tension easing collectively. You feel your own body respond. Muscles loosen slightly. The ache in your shoulders dulls. Your breathing deepens just enough to feel restorative. Cold remains, but it retreats to the edges of awareness. Belief does not banish cold. It does not fill an empty stomach or mend a drafty wall. What it does is offer a framework for patience. It tells you that this night has meaning beyond discomfort, that endurance fits into a larger story, even if you do not see its shape clearly. You let your fingers rest where they are, touching the small object beneath cloth. You do not grip it tightly. Trust does not require tension. You release your hand, letting it fall back into warmth between bodies. Sleep approaches again, quieter this time. Your thoughts lose their sharp edges. The prayer fades from words into feeling, then dissolves entirely. What remains is calm, thin, but steady. Outside, winter remains indifferent. Inside, belief has done its work, subtle and unseen. It has eased fear without demanding certainty. It has filled the space between breaths with something gentler than cold. As you drift, you carry that gentleness with you, not as conviction, not as doctrine, but as comfort. The night continues, long and patient. Wrapped in wool, breath, and quiet faith, you rest again, trusting that for now, this is enough. The cold you feel tonight is not the same cold felt everywhere. Even as you lie still, half asleep, you understand this without ever having traveled far. Winter behaves differently depending on where you stand within it. The air here has its own weight, its own habits, shaped by land, wind, and water. Geography decides much of how you endure the night. What broader historical patterns make clear is that medieval winters varied greatly across regions, and so did the ways people slept through them. In northern areas, cold was longer and more severe, demanding thicker walls, deeper thatch, and greater reliance on animals and shared warmth. In milder regions, winters were shorter, but often damper, bringing a different kind of chill that crept into bones just as stubbornly. Your body knows which kind you face. Here, the cold feels dry. It sharpens edges rather than soaking through them. Frost forms cleanly, sealing the ground and stilling the air. Snow insulates as much as it threatens. You notice how sound dulls outside, how even wind seems restrained. This kind of cold demands stillness and patience more than constant adjustment. You imagine, briefly, what sleep might feel like elsewhere. In places closer to the sea, cold arrives, wrapped in moisture. Walls sweat. Straw grows heavy. Wool stays damp, no matter how carefully it is aired. There, the night is less sharp, but more persistent, gnawing rather than biting. People there fear chill as much as frost, knowing dampness steals warmth quietly and without drama. A small but revealing detail from rural life shows how people adapted to these differences. In wetter regions, rushes and reeds were favored over straw for bedding because they dried more quickly. In colder, drier areas, thick straw was preferred for its insulating air pockets. Materials followed climate. Sleep followed materials. You feel the air now, how it sits against your skin. It is cold but not wet. That matters. Dry cold allows wool to do its work. It lets straw remain crisp rather than soggy. You are grateful for this without naming it. Gratitude here is physical, not philosophical. Wind patterns matter too. Some villages sit in sheltered valleys, spared the worst gusts. Others perch on exposed ground where wind never fully rests. You know where yours lies. You feel it in how often drafts sneak along the floor, how walls whisper rather than roar. Shelter here is imperfect but serviceable. There is continued discussion among historians about how much regional climate shaped daily routines versus how much people maintained similar habits regardless of location. Some argue environment dictated nearly everything. Others suggest cultural tradition played an equal role. Lying here, you feel both forces at work. The way you sleep tonight is shaped by cold, but also by inherited knowledge, passed down through generations. Altitude changes everything as well. Higher ground brings thinner air and sharper nights. Lower land traps moisture and fog. Even a short distance can alter how winter behaves. People notice this. They talk about it during daylight. At night, they feel it without words. Your breath feels slightly easier here than it would in damp cold. Smoke irritates, but it does not cling as heavily. The air moves just enough to refresh without stealing all warmth. You settle into this balance, aware that it could be worse, and sometimes is. A curious adaptation appears in memory. In colder regions, people often slept with their heads pointed away from prevailing winds, even indoors. Bed placement followed instinct and observation rather than design. Over time, houses were arranged to reflect this knowledge. You lie now in a position chosen long ago by someone who noticed where cold entered first. Snow outside acts as both enemy and ally. It blocks paths, limits movement, and threatens roofs if it grows too heavy. But it also insulates, sealing cracks, muffling sound, and holding a steady temperature. You sense its presence even without seeing it. The night feels wrapped, quieter than it would under bare frost. In warmer regions, snow is rare. Rain replaces it, soaking ground and walls. There, nights feel restless, punctuated by dripping and shifting dampness. People sleep lighter, waking to adjust bedding more often. You imagine that briefly, then return to your own stillness, grateful for the cold you know. Scholars remain divided on whether people in harsher climates slept better or worse than those in milder ones. Some suggest severe cold encouraged deeper stillness and heavier sleep once warmth was secured. Others argue constant threat kept rest shallow. Your experience tonight sits between. You sleep when you can, you wake when you must. Climate sets the terms. You listen again to the room. Sound remains muted. Snow absorbs what little noise escapes. Even animals are quieter in this kind of cold, conserving energy. The stillness feels intentional, as though the world itself has decided to rest. Your body responds to this steadiness. Muscles relax slightly. Breathing deepens. The cold no longer surprises you. It has revealed its nature, and you have adjusted accordingly. This understanding eases tension more than warmth alone ever could. You think of travelers, of how dangerous winter nights are for those without shelter. Exposure kills quickly in these conditions. The thought passes through you like a shadow, then moves on. You are sheltered, however imperfectly. That matters. The walls hold, the roof holds, snow settles where it must. Inside, shared warmth persists. Geography has shaped this night, but habit carries you through it. As sleep deepens again, you accept that this winter is yours, shaped by land and weather beyond your control. You have learned its patterns, its sounds, its demands. That knowledge lets you rest. The cold outside may differ elsewhere, harsher or softer, wetter or sharper. Tonight, it is this cold, and you know how to live within it. You breathe slowly, let stillness take over, and drift again into sleep, carried by the quiet agreement between body and place that has been forged over countless winters before this one. Even in the deepest part of night, the land you serve does not sleep. You feel that truth settle into you as rest loosens again, not because someone calls your name, but because responsibility never fully releases its grip. The manor exists whether you are awake or not. Fields lie frozen. Animals breathe quietly. Tools wait where they were left. Winter slows work, but it never stops it. What manorial records and customary law consistently show is that serfs remained bound to their obligations year-round, regardless of season. Winter altered the nature of labor, not its existence. Tasks shifted from fieldwork to maintenance, animal care, fuel gathering, and preparation for spring. Even on the coldest days, duties remained. Sleep, therefore, was never entirely separate from work. It was merely a pause between demands. You lie there, knowing this, without actively thinking it. Dawn will come, pale and reluctant. Someone will rise first, quietly, to stir embers, check animals, assess the weather. That someone might be you, or it might be another. The difference matters little. The work will be done because it must be. This awareness shapes how you sleep. You do not sink into rest expecting renewal. You rest expecting endurance. The goal is not comfort, it is readiness. Your body remains slightly alert, even as fatigue pulls you under again and again. A small but revealing detail surfaces in memory. Many households planned winter tasks in advance, assigning them informally through habit rather than discussion. Who checks the animals? Who gathers more fuel if snow allows? Who repairs tools near the hearth? These decisions were not debated nightly. They were understood, carried quietly into sleep, along with hunger and cold. You feel the weight of tomorrow pressed gently against your thoughts. It does not feel heavy, because it is familiar. You have risen before in similar cold. You will rise again. Anticipation does not sharpen fear. It dulls it through repetition. There is ongoing discussion among historians about how seasonal labor affected sleep patterns. Some suggest winter brought slightly longer rest due to reduced daylight. Others argue that increased domestic work and animal care balance this out. Lying here, you feel neither abundance nor deprivation of rest. You sleep when the body insists. You wake when duty requires. Your muscles ache faintly as you shift, reminding you of yesterday's work. Frozen soil is harder to dig. Wood is heavier when stiff with frost. Hands numb faster. These aches carry into the night, settling deep rather than fading. You accept them as part of the cycle. Nearby, someone exhales sharply, then settles again. Perhaps they too are thinking of morning. Perhaps they are dreaming of it. Dreams and worries blend easily here, indistinguishable in the dark. A curious observation emerges in this quiet space. Even children sense the weight of winter obligation. They are spared the heaviest tasks, but not the awareness. They hear conversations. They see routines shift. They learn early that winter requires preparation, that survival depends on effort long before comfort is considered. You adjust your cloak slightly, ensuring it will not slip when you rise. This small act feels automatic, performed even in half sleep. You are preparing without fully waking, aligning body and fabric with what comes next. The night allows this, offering moments of quiet organization. Scholars remain divided on how much agency serfs felt within these obligations. Some argue duties were oppressive, leaving little room for choice. Others note the predictability of work provided structure and purpose. Lying here, you feel neither rebellion nor pride. You feel acceptance. Obligation has become routine, stripped of drama by repetition. The thought of the Lord's land surfaces briefly, fields stretching pale under frost, fences half buried in snow, paths marked by footprints that will be erased by the next fall. These images pass through your mind without emotion. They are simply part of the world you inhabit. Winter demands more planning than summer. Mistakes are costlier. A missed task can lead to hunger, illness, loss. This knowledge sharpens attention even during sleep. You listen for changes in sound, for animal movement, for signs that something requires immediate action. Most nights, nothing does. Still, the readiness remains. You remember mornings when rising felt almost impossible. Cold biting at exposed skin, stiff limbs protesting movement. Those mornings taught you that warmth comes from action, not waiting. The memory carries a strange comfort. You know how to survive the first moments of dawn. There is no illusion here that winter will be gentle. It has already proven otherwise. Sleep does not erase that knowledge. It coexists with it, shaped by it. Rest is taken carefully, like fuel rationed against long nights. A faint lightness touches the edge of your thoughts. Not light itself, but the idea of it. Dawn is still far, but the night has passed its deepest point. This sense is subtle, felt more than understood. It eases tension slightly, allowing muscles to loosen just a bit more. You breathe out slowly, letting that knowledge settle. Morning will demand movement. Movement will bring warmth. Work will fill the day. For now, rest fills what space remains. As sleep deepens again, you do not resist it. You accept this pause, knowing it is temporary. The manna will still be there when you wake. The land will still require you. Winter will still test you. Wrapped in wool and shed air, you drift once more, carrying obligation lightly for these remaining hours. Sleep does not promise ease. It promises continuation. And in winter, continuation is victory enough. Sleep, for you, is not a doorway out of the world. It is a way of staying in it. You feel this clearly now as the night thins, not enough to signal dawn, but enough to change how rest settles into your body. Sleep does not lift you away from cold or obligation. It braces you against them, like a pause taken mid-step, rather than a destination reached. What is generally accepted about medieval rural life is that rest was understood as a practical necessity, not a pursuit of comfort. Sleep existed to restore enough strength to continue working, caring, and surviving. It was measured by usefulness rather than pleasure. You do not expect to wake refreshed. You expect to wake able. You feel this expectation in the way your body remains slightly tense even as sleep deepens. Muscles do not fully relax. Breath remains controlled. Awareness never disappears entirely. This is not anxiety. It is training. Winter has taught you that too much surrender invites trouble. When you dream, the dreams are thin. They do not carry you far. Images flicker briefly, shaped by the sounds and sensations around you. A field under frost. A fire flaring briefly, then fading. the weight of wool pressing down. These dreams dissolve easily when cold brushes too close or a sound shifts in the room. A small but telling detail from daily life fits here. Many people judged the quality of a night not by how pleasant it felt, but by whether they could rise without dizziness or trembling. A night that allowed steady movement in the morning was considered successful. Anything more was unnecessary. You have absorbed this standard without ever naming it. You shift slightly, testing your limbs. Stiffness answers, deep and familiar. You do not resent it. Stiffness means you have rested enough to notice it. You will work it out of your body when the day begins. Sleep has done its part. There is a quiet satisfaction in this endurance, though you would not call it that aloud. Endurance is not celebrated, it is expected. You endure because that is what nights demand and days require. Sleep is simply one tool among many, used carefully, never wasted. Scholars continue to question whether such an approach to sleep left people chronically exhausted, or whether bodies adapted to this rhythm over time. Some argue that constant physical labor deepened sleep whenever it occurred. Others suggest that limited comfort kept rest shallow. As you lie here, you feel the truth land somewhere between. You are tired, and yet you are capable. You listen to the room again. Breathing remains steady. No one has risen yet. Animals are quiet. The night holds. This shared stillness reinforces the idea that rest is collective as well as individual. Everyone is conserving energy together, preparing silently for the same morning. Your mind does not wander far. It circles familiar territory, returning again and again to simple sensations. Warmth at your back, cold at your feet, the weight of clothing, the slow rhythm of breath. These anchors keep you present. Escape would be disorienting. Presence keeps you ready. A curious habit surfaces in memory. Some people spoke of sleep as something you take, not something that comes to you. You take it when you can, wherever you can, under whatever conditions exist. This language reflects reality. Sleep is an action here, a deliberate choice to lie still and allow exhaustion to do its work. You notice how quickly you wake when needed. A sound shifts. An animal stirs. Your eyes open immediately, even if only briefly. This responsiveness is part of the same pattern. Sleep does not dull your edges. It smooths them just enough to keep them from breaking. The cold tests this balance constantly. It nudges you awake when your body cools too much. It punishes excess movement. It rewards stillness. Sleep becomes a negotiation, renegotiated each hour as conditions shift. You have learned its terms through long experience. There is no romance in this, no notion that hardship ennobles rest. Sleep is simply another task to manage correctly. Too little, and weakness follows. Too deep, and you risk missing what matters. You aim for the narrow space between. You think briefly of summer nights, when sleep comes heavier, wrapped in warmth and darkness without threat. Those nights feel distant now, belonging to another version of the world. Winter nights demand a different skill set. You have adapted. Nearby, someone exhales sharply, then settles again. Perhaps they are testing their own readiness, measuring fatigue against responsibility. These small checks happen without words. Everyone knows what they mean. A faint lightness touches your thoughts again, subtle and almost imperceptible. The night is slowly releasing its hold. You feel this change more than you see it. The air feels different. The cold shifts slightly, less aggressive, more settled. Morning approaches, even if it remains unseen. You allow sleep to deepen just a little more, trusting that it will loosen naturally when needed. This trust has been earned. Your body knows the rhythm of winter nights. It knows when to let go and when to hold on. Sleep here does not promise dreams of other lives. It does not carry you away. It fortifies you quietly, reinforcing muscles, steadying breath, sharpening awareness rather than dulling it. As you drift again, you accept this version of rest for what it is, not escape, not indulgence, endurance made possible through stillness. You are not refreshed, you are prepared. The night continues its slow retreat. You remain suspended within it, resting just enough, waking just enough, balanced carefully between surrender and readiness. When morning comes, you will rise stiff but steady, carrying the work of the night in your bones. For now, sleep holds you in this narrow space, doing exactly what it must and no more. Comfort, when it appears, is so small that you almost miss it. It does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, tucked into corners of the night, offering brief relief rather than lasting ease. You recognize these moments instantly, not because they are strong, but because they are rare. What everyday patterns from medieval rural life make clear is that people learn to value modest improvements intensely. A thicker patch of straw, a cloak repaired well enough to block a draft, an animal settling closer than usual. These were not luxuries, they were advantages, noticed and appreciated precisely because they changed so little, yet mattered so much. You feel one of those small comforts now. The straw beneath your shoulder has shifted just right, creating a pocket that holds warmth instead of letting it slip away. It is not soft, it is not even particularly thick, but it cradles you in a way the rest of the bedding does not. You stay perfectly still, afraid to break the spell. Nearby, the body beside you exhales deeply, releasing a faint bloom of warmth into the space between you. It lingers for a moment, enough to ease the chill pressing at your ribs. Shared warmth is unpredictable. It depends on position, breath, stillness. Tonight, it favors you briefly. A quietly revealing detail emerges here. People became experts at noticing micro changes in comfort, a slight increase in warmth, a reduction in draft, a lessened ache in a joint. These shifts mattered because they made the difference between rest and constant wakefulness. You feel this difference now, as your breathing deepens without effort. Your cloak remains folded just so, doubled across your chest. The wool has warmed fully, losing its initial stiffness. It molds to your body, heavy but cooperative. You resist the urge to adjust it further. Experience has taught you that improvement is fragile. Leave it alone. There is an ongoing discussion among historians about how much these small comforts affected morale and endurance. Some argue that incremental improvements accumulated over time, making winter more manageable. Others suggest their impact was psychological rather than physical. Lying here, you feel both effects. The warmth is real. So is the reassurance it brings. Your feet, usually the coldest part of you, feel almost neutral now. Not warm, exactly, but no longer aching. This alone feels like a gift. You flex your toes slightly, then stop, unwilling to invite cold back in. Stillness protects the moment. A faint memory surfaces of past winters when no such comfort appeared. Nights spent shivering constantly, unable to find any position that eased the cold. Those nights blurred into long stretches of wakefulness, exhaustion compounding itself. Compared to those, this night feels almost kind. You sense the room settling into a deeper quiet. Breathing evens out. Animals remain still. The wind outside has softened further. Snow continues to muffle the world. All of these factors combine, creating a brief pocket where the night loosens its grip. Another small comfort reveals itself in sound. The room creaks less now. Wood has finished contracting. Thatch has settled under snow. The absence of sharp noises allows your mind to relax. You are no longer bracing for sudden interruption. Calm spreads gently. A minor but telling habit fits here. People learn to remember these moments, not as memories, but as expectations. When winter returned, they searched for the same small signs of relief. A good patch of straw, a well-repaired cloak, a quiet night. These memories guided preparation, shaping how resources were used when times were better. You notice your jaw unclench slightly. Tension drains from your neck. These changes are subtle but meaningful. They signal that your body trusts this moment enough to let go just a little more. Scholars still debate whether medieval people experienced pleasure in such conditions or simply relief. The distinction matters less here. Relief itself feels profound when discomfort is constant. Pleasure may be too strong a word, but ease, however brief, carries its own quiet joy. You let your breathing slow further, riding this small wave of comfort. Each inhale feels less guarded. Each exhale releases heat, without fear of losing it all. The balance feels right, for now. The straw beneath you holds. The cloak remains in place. Shared warmth persists. Nothing demands your attention. You allow yourself to sink deeper into sleep, trusting that this moment will last long enough to matter. Time stretches again, softened by rest. You are not fully aware of passing minutes. You drift within them, anchored by warmth and quiet. Dreams brush the edge of your mind, faint and gentle, not vivid enough to pull you away. Cold does not vanish. It waits patiently at the edges, ready to return when conditions change. You do not forget this, but you do not focus on it either. You accept the comfort offered and let it do its work. As sleep deepens, you understand something without naming it. Survival in winter is not built from grand solutions. It is built from these moments, stacked carefully together. A warm shoulder, a still room, a well-placed cloak, enough rest to stand again. You carry that understanding with you as you drift further under. The night remains long, but it has softened. Comfort has not conquered it, but it has carved out a small refuge within it. You rest there quietly, knowing it will pass, knowing another adjustment may be needed later. For now, you stay exactly as you are, letting this small mercy hold you, grateful not in words, but in breath and stillness. Even as you lie here, wrapped in wool and half-sleep, traces of nights like this are sinking quietly into the ground beneath you. You do not think about it now, but centuries from this moment, people will search for signs of how you rested, how you endured winter when comfort was scarce. What they will find is not a bed in the way modern minds imagine one. They will find hints, impressions, fragments, enough to suggest a pattern, never enough to tell the full story. What material evidence consistently indicates is that most medieval serfs did not sleep on raised beds, especially in earlier periods. Excavations of rural dwellings often reveal little more than compacted earth floors, sometimes darker in certain areas where organic matter accumulated. These patches suggest repeated placement of straw or rush bedding, moved and replaced season after season in the same spots. The bed was not an object, it was a habit. You feel that habit now in the way your body has shaped the straw beneath you. The hollow fits you because it has been formed slowly, night after night, not just by you, but by others before you. Bodies tend to return to the same places. Warmth gathers there more easily. Drafts are better understood. Over time, these preferred spots leave subtle marks, invisible to you, but persistent enough to survive in soil. A small but revealing detail from archaeological work adds texture to this image. In some peasant homes, researchers have found traces of plant matter compressed into the floor, sometimes mixed with ash or charcoal. This suggests that bedding was not always gathered and removed each morning. In winter especially, straw might remain in place, refreshed only when it became too broken down to serve its purpose. Cleanliness bowed to practicality. You shift slightly, careful not to disturb the fragile warmth you have built. The straw responds, but the hollow remains. It remembers you. This is how beds exist here, through repetition rather than structure. No frame defines its edges. No mattress claims permanence. The body itself decides where rest happens. There is a quiet elegance to this simplicity, though you would not call it that. Everything in the hut serves multiple purposes. Straw insulates roofs, feeds animals, lines floors, becomes bedding. Ash warms, preserves, marks, and absorbs. Nothing is wasted. The bed is not separate from the house. It is part of it. Modern scholars continue to examine whether raised beds became more common earlier than once thought. Some evidence suggests that wooden platforms existed in certain regions, especially later in the medieval period or among slightly wealthier households. Others caution that such findings are rare and unevenly distributed. From where you lie, this debate feels abstract. Tonight, the floor is your bed, and it has always been so. You imagine how this space might look from above, stripped of darkness and life, just earth, straw fibers ground into soil, a scatter of ash, maybe a faint discoloration where bodies rested most often. These traces would not tell anyone how cold it felt, or how carefully you arranged yourself to hold warmth. They would not capture the sound of breath or the smell of smoke. They would only hint. A curious observation arises from these studies. In some excavated homes, the areas associated with sleeping are positioned away from entrances and closer to interior walls. This suggests an awareness of drafts and heat loss built into the layout of daily life. You feel that awareness now without ever articulating it. Your body knows where warmth lasts longest. The idea of privacy does not factor into these findings. There are no partitions marking individual sleeping spaces. The absence itself is telling. Rest here is communal by default. The archaeological record reflects this through lack rather than presence. No walls, no screens, just shared space shaped by use. You feel another person breathe nearby, their warmth pressing lightly against your side. That closeness would leave no trace in the soil, yet it defines the experience of the night more than any object could. This is the challenge of reading the past. What matters most often leaves the faintest marks. Researchers remain divided on how much agency people had in choosing their sleeping arrangements versus following established patterns. Some argue that necessity dictated everything. Others suggest families adapted layouts creatively within constraints. Lying here, you sense both forces. You follow tradition because it works. You adjust because conditions demand it. Your hand brushes against the floor beneath the straw, feeling the cold earth through thin layers. That sensation reminds you how little separates you from the ground itself. Over years, that contact leaves its mark on both body and soil. Knees, elbows, shoulders press into the same spots. Weight compacts earth gradually, subtly, until the floor itself reflects the rhythms of human rest. Another small but telling detail appears in the record. In some sites, fragments of wooden boards are found near sleeping areas, suggesting temporary platforms or pallets used at times. These may have been brought out during illness or extreme cold, then removed when conditions eased. Flexibility mattered more than permanence. You do not have such boards tonight. You have straw, wool, and habit. That is enough. Your body has learned how to make this work, shaping itself to the floor rather than demanding the floor change. The thought that this moment might leave a trace feels strange, almost amusing. You do not imagine yourself as part of history. You imagine yourself as tired, cold, and trying to sleep. Yet this ordinary act is exactly what future understanding will depend on. Not grand events, but repeated nights like this one. The straw rustles softly as you settle again. The sound fades quickly. The hollow holds. Warmth lingers just enough. The bed exists because you are in it, and because others have been here before you. As sleep deepens, your body presses gently into earth and plant fiber, completing the quiet exchange that defines medieval rest. You give warmth. The ground takes it. You receive just enough support to continue. Centuries later, someone may point to a patch of soil and say, "This is where people slept." They will not know your name. They will not know how you curled your legs or folded your cloak. But they will know that someone lay here, winter after winter, enduring the night. You drift again, unaware of the future, focused only on the present balance of warmth and cold. The bed beneath you is invisible, impermanent, yet real. It holds you now. That is all it needs to do. As the night stretches on, you sense that much of what you experience will never be settled into a single, clean explanation. The way you sleep, the way you endure, resists certainty. It lives in the space between what can be measured and what can only be felt. Even now, centuries later, people will try to decide how nights like this truly unfolded, and they will not fully agree. What is clear from careful study is that medieval winter nights were not uniform experiences. Written accounts are scarce, often indirect, filtered through those who rarely lived as you do. Material traces offer hints but not sensations. From these fragments, scholars piece together possibilities, aware that certainty remains just out of reach. Some researchers suggest that nights like this were harsher than we tend to imagine, that cold, hunger, and smoke kept sleep shallow and restless. They point to accounts of stiffness, fatigue, and illness as evidence that rest rarely restored the body fully. According to this view, endurance came at a cost, carried silently from winter into spring. Others interpret the same evidence differently. They argue that bodies adapted over time, that constant physical labor and early darkness encouraged deeper rest whenever warmth and stillness allowed. In this view, sleep was fragmented but effective, shaped by necessity rather than comfort. The body learned to take what it needed from brief windows of rest. You lie between these interpretations without choosing either. Your own experience refuses to be reduced to a single answer. Some nights are worse than others. Some nights offer moments of deep stillness that surprise you. Both truths coexist easily here. A smaller debate circles the question of awareness. Did people sleep lightly, always alert to danger, or did familiarity dull vigilance enough to allow true rest? You feel the answer shift hour by hour. Early in the night, awareness remains sharp. Later, exhaustion softens it. Sleep deepens not because danger disappears, but because the body insists. There is also discussion about whether discomfort was perceived as suffering or simply as normal. Modern minds often frame cold and hunger as crises. Your experience suggests something subtler. Cold is expected. Hunger is managed. Suffering begins only when conditions exceed what habit has prepared you for. Tonight, the line has not been crossed. Some historians focus on emotional life, wondering whether nights like this were filled with anxiety or acceptance. They look for fear in superstition, in prayer, in ritual. Others caution against assuming constant distress, noting how repetition can dull fear into routine. Lying here, you feel concern without panic, awareness without dread. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It means familiarity. The question of sleep quality remains especially open. Was rest restorative enough to sustain years of labor, or did exhaustion accumulate relentlessly? Skeletal evidence shows wear, but also survival. People lived long enough to raise families, to work fields, to endure many winters. Sleep, however imperfect, must have done enough. You consider how difficult it is to describe sleep even in your own time. Nights blur together, memories soften, sensations fade. If you were asked tomorrow how you slept, you might struggle to answer clearly. Multiply that uncertainty across generations, and it becomes clear why certainty remains elusive. Another point of debate concerns seasonal variation. Some argue that winter brought longer rest due to extended darkness. Others note that increased domestic labor and cold-related vigilance offset any extra hours. Your night suggests that time alone does not define rest. Quality matters more than duration. The role of community in sleep is also examined closely. Did shared spaces promote security or tension? Evidence points both ways. Close quarters increased awareness of others, but also provided warmth and reassurance. Isolation might offer quiet, but it also magnified cold and vulnerability. Your own rest feels anchored by presence rather than solitude. Scholars also revisit assumptions about beds and posture. Did people sleep flat, curled, propped? Evidence suggests variation shaped by cold, injury, and habit. You curl inward not by instruction, but by instinct. Comfort follows form rather than design. Even the idea of night itself is questioned. Without clocks, night was not a single block of time but a shifting experience. Deep night, late night, early morning. Each carried different expectations. Your awareness changes with these phases, guided by sound, cold, and the body's rhythms rather than hours counted. The more researchers look, the more they find that medieval sleep resists simple narratives. It was neither constant misery nor quiet idyll. It was dynamic, negotiated nightly between body and environment. You live that negotiation now, without analysis, without labels. You feel the truth of this complexity in your own drifting awareness. One moment, you are keenly conscious of cold at your feet. The next, you sink into warmth shared between bodies. One breath carries worry, the next carries calm. Both are real, neither cancels the other. As the night moves closer to its end, this ambiguity becomes strangely comforting. There is no single right way to sleep here. There is only the way that works tonight. That flexibility is what allows survival across years and generations. You adjust once more, minimal and careful. The straw holds. The cloak stays in place. Shared warmth persists. This configuration may not look ideal to an outside observer, but it fits the moment. If someone were to ask later how medieval serfs slept through freezing winters without heating, any simple answer would fall short. The truth lives here, in this layered experience of cold, habit, belief, and adaptation. It cannot be reduced to a list. It must be felt. You let that understanding settle, not as a conclusion, but as an acceptance. Sleep here is not a problem to be solved. It is a condition to be managed, night after night, with whatever tools exist. As you drift again, you carry this quiet knowledge with you. The night does not require certainty, it requires endurance, and in that, you have already succeeded, one careful breath at a time. The night begins to loosen its hold in ways so subtle, you almost miss them. Nothing dramatic happens. There is no sudden warmth, no clear light. Instead, the cold changes character. It feels less aggressive, more settled, as if it has done what it came to do and is now willing to wait. You sense this shift before you understand it. Your body recognizes it too. Breathing deepens slightly without effort. Muscles, long held in careful tension, relax just enough to feel heavy. You do not wake fully. You hover in that quiet place where rest and awareness overlap, listening for signs that morning is preparing itself somewhere beyond the walls. What careful observation of rural life confirms is that people often sensed dawn long before they saw it. Without clocks or candles, the body learned to notice small cues, changes in air pressure, a different quality of silence, the way animals breathe. The night rarely ended abruptly. It thinned. You hear a faint movement near the animals, a shift of weight, a soft snort. They are not rising yet, but they are no longer completely still. Their bodies respond to the same signals as yours. The room feels slightly less enclosed, though nothing has physically changed. Outside, snow continues to rest where it fell. It reflects the faintest hint of light, not visible to you, but felt in the air. Sound remains muted, but the silence carries less weight. The world is preparing to move again. You remain where you are, wrapped in wool, pressed gently against shared warmth. There is no rush to rise. Rising too early wastes energy. The best moment is when cold movement begins to warm the body rather than punish it. You wait for that moment instinctively. A small but telling habit appears here. People often stretch slowly before standing, even in cramped spaces, flexing fingers, rolling shoulders, waking limbs while still sheltered. You begin this process now without opening your eyes. A subtle flex of toes, a slow roll of the neck. Each movement is tested against cold, adjusted until it feels possible. There is no agreement among historians about how early medieval households rose during winter. Some suggest people stayed in bed as long as possible to conserve warmth. Others argue that chores demanded early movement regardless of comfort. Your experience balances both. You rise when rising will help rather than harm. You feel the straw beneath you cool slightly as body heat shifts. The hollow you have made will fade soon, flattened by movement, ready to be reshaped tonight. The bed is temporary. It always is. Someone nearby exhales deeply and shifts more noticeably. Another follows. The cluster loosens slightly, not breaking apart, but preparing to. This shared movement feels coordinated, though no one speaks. The room responds together. You open your eyes briefly. Darkness remains, but it is thinner now, more transparent. Shapes emerge faintly. The outline of a wall, the darker mass of animals, the place where the hearth waits, black and patient. Your cloak slips slightly as you move. You adjust it automatically, keeping it close. Clothing will remain important until the fire wakes again. You do not remove layers yet. That will come later, when warmth allows. A quiet sense of completion settles over you. Not satisfaction, exactly, but something close. You have made it through another winter night. Cold did not overwhelm you. Hunger did not force you from rest. Illness remained at the edges. This counts as success. Scholars often focus on survival in grand terms. Population numbers, harvest yields, mortality rates. But survival is built from nights like this one. Ordinary nights. Nights that end not in triumph, but in continuation. You feel that truth in your bones as you prepare to rise. Your body protests slightly as you push yourself up onto an elbow. Stiffness answers immediately, sharp but manageable. You pause, letting blood move, letting joints remember how to work. Rushing would only worsen the pain. Winter teaches patience even at dawn. Someone reaches toward the hearth, disturbing ash gently. A faint glow answers, barely visible. That glow feels hopeful without being dramatic. Fire will return. Warmth will follow. The day will begin. You sit up slowly, careful not to step on straw or limbs. The room feels larger now that movement has returned. Cold remains, but it no longer feels unbeatable. It has been faced and held at bay through stillness. Now it will be answered with motion. As you rise, the night releases you fully. It does not cling, it does not resist. It simply steps aside, satisfied that you endured it, as so many have before you. You carry the memory of the night with you, not as a story, but as a physical understanding. How to lie, how to breathe, how to share warmth, how to rest just enough. These lessons will return tonight, and the night after that, and the one after. Winter is not finished, but you are ready. You stand, wrapped in wool and resolve, and turn toward the hearth as the faintest light begins to touch the world outside. The night has done its work. Now the day will do its own. The fire wakes slowly, just as you do. Embers breathe under ash, stretching back into light with gentle encouragement. Someone feeds them carefully, and warmth begins its familiar return. Not much at first, just enough to take the sharp edge from the air. You remain still for a moment longer, letting that warmth find you. Your breathing slows, your shoulders drop. The night feels farther away now, already softening into memory. Outside, the world remains pale and quiet. Snow holds its shape. Frost clings where it can. Inside, life stirs without hurry. No one speaks yet. Words can wait. You feel calm settle over you, not because life is easy, but because it continues. Another night endured, another morning reached. As the room brightens by degrees, you carry that calm with you. The cold will return, the night will come again, but for now, there is warmth, movement, and the simple comfort of being awake. Let your breath slow with theirs. Let the final images fade gently. Straw, wool, firelight, quiet endurance. You have rested enough. Sweet dreams.